Little Landon, are you okay?" The panicked voice pressed against his ears. A softer one followed. "Whose voice is that? Didn't I die?" A spike of pain split his skull. "Ah!" He clutched his head and forced his eyes open. A woman and a girl leaned over him. The woman was stunning even in exhaustion. Brown hair, elegant posture, a face carved by worry and hard years. The girl beside her was striking too. Black hair, green eyes, a beauty that would turn heads anywhere. She looked about 15. Both were crying. Both were shaking him like he might disappear. "Am I not supposed to be sick? Stop shaking me, or I really will die." His limbs felt like wet sand. Every jolt hurt. "I'm fine, Mom." "Lucy, don't cry. I feel better already." "Little Landon, you're all I have," the woman said. "If anything happened to you, I wouldn't know how to live." "Brother Landon, don't scare me like that," the girl added. "You've been out for 2 days." His stomach growled. "Grhhhhh." The woman poked her head out the carriage window. "Please stop the carriage." "Little Landon, let me make you something to eat." "I'll help, Auntie," Lucy said quickly. "You rest, Brother Landon." "Okay," he managed. They climbed down. He shut his eyes and tried to make sense of it. He had been Chu-E, a 26-year-old mechanical engineer with a decent grasp of electrical systems. He had just gotten a big raise. On the drive home, a car hit him. Then darkness. Right when I finally got the raise. Now he was in the body of Landon Barn, a 15-year-old illegitimate prince of Arkadina. His mother, Kim Obley, had been a palace maid. On the night the third prince, James Barn, was born, the king drank too much and forced himself on her. When Kim's pregnancy showed, the king hid her in a back room and ordered her out of palace service. He already had 3 wives, and they treated Kim like dirt. Whenever the king saw Kim and the child, he looked at her like a gold digger and at Landon with disgust, as if he hadn't caused it all. Lucy's story was no kinder. She was the illegitimate daughter of Baron Gustav. For months after her mother died, the Baron disowned her. Kim found the girl begging in the streets, took her in as Landon's personal maid, and loved her like a daughter. Lucy moved in at 10 and never left. Landon's father had 6 children in total. Eli Barn, first prince, 19, first wife. Jeanette Barn, first princess, 18, third wife. Connor Barn, second prince, 18, second wife. Carrie Barn, second princess, 17, first wife. James Barn, third prince, 16, third wife. And Landon, the illegitimate one. They bullied Landon without mercy and used him like a servant. He learned to be quiet, careful, and grown beyond his years. A month ago, on Landon's 15th birthday, the king announced that Landon would inherit the fief of Baymard, and that Baymard would no longer belong to the empire. Everyone knew Baymard was barren, starved, and cold. It was the empire's 3rd largest city by land, but the people had fled to survive. Baymard lay at the far edge of the realm, the empire at its front and an endless sea at its back. Exile, out of sight, out of mind. And with Baymard cut from the empire, any war or disaster there would be not our problem. Cunning old fool, Chu-E thought. No, Landon Barn. I am Landon now, and I need to build, not beg. Develop the land. He started to sit up. A voice rang in his head. Host selected. System analyzing. 20% complete. 35% complete. 71% complete. 100% complete. Landon froze. I never thought those system stories on Earth were real. The voice came from inside his head. Flat. Mechanical. Ding. Do you wish to bind with the system? Bind. Ding. Binding with technological system complete. Host must work hard to bring advanced technology and development to this world. Landon froze, excitement flickering under his confusion. System, why me? When Host lived on Earth, Host's IQ was 260. Among recently deceased candidates, Host was the most suitable. With Host's intellect, access to system knowledge is efficient. Minimum IQ requirement is 250. So I was the smartest dead person. Wait, what? Are you sure? Affirmative. Smarter candidates remain alive. Due to Host's fortunate death, Host was the next best option. Landon nearly choked. Fortunate for who? He exhaled. What is done is done. System, how do I use you? System will assign tasks based on the state of host kingdom. If raw materials are lacking, system will provide them as rewards. Completing tasks yields rewards. Host may also purchase basic equipment helpful to missions. Purchase equipment? Yes. Use 3 currencies: experience, technology, and bonus points. Experience points are earned when host applies system knowledge to improve the kingdom. Technology points are earned when advanced technology is created. Bonus points are earned when host uses personal ingenuity to invent or solve major problems. The system has unlimited levels. Difficulty increases with each level. A translucent screen opened in front of him. Host, Landon Barn. Age 15. Status, banished Prince of Arcadina, new King of Baymard. Level, beginner. Current situation, critically weak. Prolonged exposure to wind may be dangerous. Status ailment, Nolet wisp poisoning. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was it the king? A sibling? He had barely left the capital, and someone had already tried to finish him off. No wonder his mother and Lucy's shaking felt like a death roll. A gift box icon blinked. System Starter Pack. Introductory Farming Knowledge. Rationale. Host must develop land before creating advanced tools. Bonus. System will cure host and raise physical strength above average. He tapped the box. Knowledge flooded his mind. Warmth rolled through his limbs. The pain ebbed. He glanced at his wrist. The sickly pallor receded by the second, skin filling with color. He opened the Mission tab. Mission 1. Is your land really barren? Use farming knowledge to end food shortages. A strong empire needs strong people, and strong people must be fed. Submission. Use the system to map your territory for future development. Reward. Knowledge of gunpowder and cannon making. Plus 100 development points. Deadline none. That made sense. Hungry people do not work or fight. Food first. He tapped the second mission. Mission 2. Clear level 1. Requirements. 2,000 experience points and 10,000 technology points. Reward. Level 2 unlocked. Deadline none. He shrugged. He will be doing that work anyway. It might take 5 missions or more to climb the first rung. System. Tell me about this world. World. Hertphilia. Continents. 9. Host resides on Pino. Pino has 5 empires: Arcadina, Corona, Diepharus, Terike, Jotun. Each empire has at least 15 major cities and 30 minor cities. Host fief, Baymard, 3rd largest city in Arcadina by land. Status of Baymard. Area, 6,000 square kilometers. Population, 1,582. Major cities exceed 100,000 citizens. Minor cities exceed 10,000. Host territory is below minor city threshold. Food supply is critically low. Fishing supplements diet but is insufficient. Winters are severe and cause multiple deaths. At least he had a baseline and a plan. He glanced around the carriage. The wood was scuffed and thin, the cushions flat. A commoner's wagon. The king had not even paid for a proper send-off. Stingy to the end. The door swung open and Lucy slipped in, then stopped short, blinking. Color had returned to his face. Relief softened her smile. Brother Landon, you look better already. Do you want to eat inside the carriage or outside? Outside, he said, rising and following her into the light.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
There were 10 groups of people sitting on the floor. Each had at least 30 people gathered around a pile of food. As he walked by, they knelt on one knee, giving him a proper salute. Greetings, Your Highness. You should all sit down and not bother yourselves with such formalities, he said while smiling. The men were relieved and sat back down. He continued to follow Lucy while shaking his head. When he saw his mother, he made way towards her and sat by her side. She looked at him more seriously, turning him from left to right and right to left. She then hugged him, and then put her hands on his head as if checking his temperature. At the same time, Lucy held his wrist as if trying to feel his heartbeat. She then turned his face left to right, and then right to left as if convincing herself that he is truly fine. I'm a king, for God's sake. You guys keep treating me like a child. What will my men think when they see me like this? So, shaking me like this would make me dizzy, he thought. Little Landon, are you feeling any better? Although you look better, when we get to Baymard, we will look for a physician. Here, eat more food. As his mom spoke, she took out a large plate and kept adding food on the plate. Landon's eyes nearly popped out. He looked around and noticed that his plate was the biggest in the group. Forget the group, it was the biggest plate he had ever seen in his life. How could someone use this plate to eat? Tell me the truth. Are you trying to kill me with a full belly? Brother Landon, here, take some of my food. As Lucy spoke, she also kept adding more and more food on the plate. His mother kept adding so much food to his plate. When she finally stopped, she held his spoon and scooped the food toward his mouth. Oh my God, now are trying to feed me too? He couldn't help but exclaim inwardly. When Kim saw that he wasn't eating the food on the spoon, she thought it was probably because it was too hot. So she did what any mother would do. She blew the food on the spoon. Whoa, here, little Landon, it's cold now. Quickly eat up. Landon was speechless. He quickly looked at the group of men in his group. It was clear that they were trying not to laugh. In fact, one of the men's eyes were turning funny mixture between red and violet. He looked at them as if saying, "Help me," but they shrugged their shoulders and continued eating while holding in their laughters. Is this what it feels like to have a mother? It feels very nice. Fine, I'll allow you to feed me now. But this is the last time. After all, I'm considered as a sick man, so it's not that strange, right? He couldn't help thinking. In his previous life, he was an orphan who never had parental love. But in this life, although he has a bastard father, his mom is an angel. He's also surrounded by people who genuinely care for him. Looking at Lucy, he suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. She was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen, and coupled with the fact that she spent her time taking care of the old Landon, always standing up from him when he was bullied. She was loyal, caring, and somewhat strong. He secretly vowed that he would take care of her and protect her from now on. Although he was touched by his mother and Lucy, he couldn't help thinking, do I look like a baby pig to you women? 3 grown men could eat what's on my plate, and there would still be leftovers. Isn't this too much? Even though he thought that, looking at Lucy and his mother's encouraging faces, he decided to eat everything. I guess this is the day I die from overeating. When Landon and his mother had left the capital, they were given just 330 knights. Most barons and dukes had at least 3,000 knights under their care. When his brothers were all 15, they were given prosperous cities to rule with no less than 10,000 knights under their wings. Even his sisters were given more knights than he did. Although his sisters were given mansions in the capital and not cities to rule, they were given 3,000 knights under their rule and command. The knights that followed him were either deemed by the empire as having the worst talent for knighthood, lacked the proper training, or were seen as a nuisance to the king. All in all, these knights were actually good people who were just bullied by people in the empire. But among these men, there were 5 outstanding knights. Lucius was a knight commander, having one of the highest honors in the empire. It came as a shock to a lot of people when he resigned, stating that he would follow Landon to Baymard. Of course, not to him. He knew better than anyone based on his memories. Lucius had taken care of him as a father ever since he could remember. It's clear that Lucius has feelings for his mom, but she's too dense to see it. He couldn't help thinking, do I need to set them up together? After all, Mom deserves happiness too. While he was thinking, he continued to eat and look around. He looked at the 3 men sitting by Lucius. They were Josh, Mark, and Gary. They were all loyal disciples of Lucius who followed him everywhere. Of course, they also treated Landon as a brother. They all worked hard and attained the position of knight captain. Lastly, he looked over to Trey Parsi, who is his personal knight and bodyguard. Trey is extremely loyal to Landon that you would think it's an addiction. He always stays close to Landon, protecting him at all times. They usually play together and crack jokes here and there. In Trey's heart, Landon is his brother. Although Trey is only 19, he is extremely strong and attained the position of knight lieutenant. In the Empire, Knights were ranked after assessing their achievements and strengths. A knight's rank starts from the least rewarding position, a squire to a page, then lieutenant, captain, major, commander, master commander, and finally a provost. After they all had their full, they continued to journey towards their new home, Baymart. As they neared closer towards the city, Landon couldn't help but gasp. The city was almost as big as the capital. Although it said that the lands are barren, only an idiot would truly give it up. Probably my father had only heard of the crises going on here and never stepped in the city to check it out. Truly a fool, Landon thought. Baymard was surrounded by extremely high city walls, which looked to be about 16 m high. There was only one outer gate post for entry and exit in Baymard. It looked exactly like a medieval city in the movies. As they drove through the city, people looked at them curiously. He could almost hear whispers. Is that the new lord and his family? Do you think they would help us? I heard that the new lord isn't favored in the empire. Really, ADI theory. Do you think we're finished then? As they drove by, Landon started accessing the situation in this new kingdom. These people were extremely poor and didn't have the money to afford anything right now. They get their food mainly from fishing and occasional hunting. If he had to run the kingdom, he needed money, a lot of it. Luckily, his mother and the old Landon were smart. His mother started saving all her coins since he was born, while Landon, started saving at age 7. Royal princes start having their monthly allowances at age 7 because that's when they start their knighthood training as a page. When they were in the capital, the wives of the king had a monthly allowance of 500 gold coins, while his mother would only take 200 gold coins. Once his mother found out she was pregnant, she knew it was only a matter of time before they kicked her out. So she saved all her money, never spending more than what she needed. As for Landon, when he started training as a page in the royal family, he received 50 gold coin per month. If he were a commoner, it would be 700 copper coins, while his brothers had received 300 gold coins per month. He gave all his money to his mother to save. They didn't need much in life, since they eat and lived at the back of the palace, never needing anything else. They were able to save quite a few gold coins, but all of that is about to change. Before, they had only themselves. But now, they have an entire kingdom to feed and wages to pay for their knights and servants, which is fair. Before, all these people took their salaries from the empire. Now, Landon would have to step up. He quickly calculated that their savings should be able to take care of everyone for at least 6 months. Based on the currency, 100 copper coins gives 1 silver coin. Similarly, 100 silver coins give 1 gold coin. The average salary pays up to 250 copper coins, while knight's salary pays 700 copper coins minimum, depending on their ranks. He also took into account that he may need to build new equipments and buildings. He quickly remembered the starter pack he received. Once he waited for food to grow, he would have to fish the kingdom. When they arrived at the only castle in the city, maids rushed out to greet them. "Good day, your highness and highnesses," they said while curtsying. "Be at ease. I am your new lord, Landon Barn. This is my mother Kim, my friend Lucy, my loyal retainers, and my staff. Now let's see our new home, shall we?" he said with a smile on his face. Once they were introduced and shown the entire castle, Landon, all the staff gathered and waited for further instructions. Looking at the group of people, most were in their early 20s, while some were in their late teens and a few in their early teens. "How many people work in the castle?" he asked. A girl in her early 20s stepped forward and spoke, answering, "My lord, 30. There are 12 gardeners for stable boys and 3 cooks and 11 maids." "Good. Nathan, Daniela, please step forward," he said. "My lord," they said while stepping forward. Both have been loyal to his mother for many years. Nathan is a 47-year butler, while Daniela is a middle-aged woman. They are actually married, and their only child is actually Gary. "Nathan, you're to train the boys, while Daniela will train the girls. You all will be paid at the end of the month. Your salary will be 350 copper coins. Use it to take care of your families. If you all have any difficulties, please inform any of us present. After all, we are all family." As the servants heard this, they were stunned and then very excited. One should know that there was no money around to even buy food. Their families had had a very hard life here. They all knew that the average salary is 250 Cooper coins, but His Highness offered 100 more copper coins. What did this mean? His Highness is so kind and compassionate. We must serve him loyally, they all thought. Once he dismissed all the servants, he decided to discuss with his retainers. You all have served my household loyally for years. This is our new home, our new life. The Empire has sent us away for good. As he said that, he looked at she retainers. They were all angry. They then continued. They might have thought that they'll have the last laugh. They might even think we would all die without their help. They think we are weak, defenseless, and a nuisance to the Empire. But I don't believe so. We will turn this place into heaven and deny them access to it. As he spoke, the knights were getting very excited. Their blood were boiling. Most of them were told they were useless all their lives. They are called trash and looked down on many times in the capital. Even Lucy and his mom couldn't help it, as they blood boiled. Are you all with me? Yah, they replied. I said, are you all with me? Good, because I need super knights who would train efficiently. So I will only pay the salary for a super knight. All pages will get 1,000 copper coins. Squires will get 2,000 coins. Lieutenants get 3,500. Captains get 6,000. Majors get 9,000. Commanders get 12,000. Master commanders get 15,000. And finally, provosts get 18,000 copper coins a month. Everyone was shocked. The amount was definitely too high for the various professions. This is a new era, a new time, a new home, and a new king. Long live the king. Long live the king. I've late will have no breakfast and lunch for the rest of the day. More than 3 absences without a good reason will result in no food for a day and intense punishment. Now, Dio, you understand? All the knights immediately yelled back. Yes, my king. Excellent. Now divide yourselves into 3 groups. It can be in any order, but each group must contain at 100 men. Once he finished speaking, he walked towards his mother and Lucy. Mom, we will need enough food to feed all the knights, our workers, and ourselves. How much do we have? He asked. His mom thought for a while and answered. We brought 3 wagons filled with wheat, 1 wagon filled with beans, 1 wagon filled with peas, 1 wagon filled barley, rye and oats, and finally a wagon filled with various seeds needed for farming. That's good. Mom, Lucy. Tomorrow morning, could you all make sure that the kitchen makes enough food for all the knights? I need all the food delivered to the inner courtyard at daybreak every morning. He asked softly. After all, she was his mother, not some soldier in the army, and Lucy was someone he cared about deeply. Lucy looked at Landon's handsome face and blushed. Since when did Brother Landon look so cool and handsome? Lucy continued to blush as she observed Landon. On the other hand, Kim looked at her son's handsome face. She smiled and thought, when did my little baby grow up? He's so cute, acting all tough and manly. Pinching his checks gently, she said, my little boy has grown up. Of course I'll do it. This is our home now. Whatever you need me to do, just say it. Brother Landon, do you even need to ask? I'll do anything you need me to do, Lucy said. Immediately, as she realized what she just said, her blush intensified. Kim noticed and couldn't help giggling. Landon was confused, so to why his mom kept giggling. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Lucy. Looking at them, he felt that he was truly blessed. Even though he felt like that, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Woman, why can't you take me seriously? Although I may look 15, I'm a full-grown man for Pitsake. Can't you see that this is a serious military moment? You just said I've grown up. Yet, here you are, pinching my cheeks in public. Oh, I give up. Luckily no one saw you do it, or else this serious atmosphere would be a joke. Once he finished speaking to his mom, he looked around and saw all his soldiers split into 3 main groups, excluding Commander Lucius. He walked towards them with a serious look on his face. Since we have 3 knight captains in our kingdom, all knights will be grouped under these captains. All the knight captains will in turn answer to Commander Lucius. Captain Josh. Josh stepped out of the crowd and gave a salute. My king, he said still on bended knees. You will lead, train, and take care of all men in the first group. As you wish, my king. Josh moved towards Lucius, gave him a salute saying, Commander, and walked towards the first group. When he arrived in front of them, they all shouted. Captain. Josh then stood in front of them and faced Landon. Landon then continued on with allocating the other teams to Mark and Gary, repeating the same scenarios. Once everyone looked satisfied with their various groups, they all faced Landon and yelled, "My lord." They felt like they truly belonged here as compared to when they were in the capital. No one had ever paid so much attention to them as Landon was doing. You all will take each other as family, as each other's brother. You will eat together, work together, grow strong together, and build this kingdom together. No knight will ever be left behind. They were stunned and equally surprised. No one would be left behind. This was the first time that they heard such a phrase. In this world, the strong rules and the weak perished. That's just the way things were. But since most of them were considered as weak in Empire, so they were heavily affected and touched by Landon's words. For now, we will do an inspection on the land. Commander Lucius, what do you think? Landon asked while looking at Lucius. My king, it's an excellent idea. I propose that we all go for the inspection, so to know how to protect Baymard. Lucius answered immediately. I agree. After all, we need to have a clear understanding of the situation here. Based on the information we gather, we will be able to appropriately allocate duties and responsibilities to everyone. For now, let's go look at Baymard. Everyone needed. As he was about to move out with his men, Lucius stopped him with a smile on his face. Little Landon, does your cheek still hurt? As they left the castle, Landon quickly checked on the system. System, how do I use you to map out the territory? Answering host. Host just needs to look at the map of the empire stored in the system and highlight the territories that belong to host. Just like that, Landon asked, almost not believing the system. Yes. So what happens when I want to expand my territories? If that were to happen, host just needs to highlight more regions on the system map. Landon nodded as he listened to the system. This is also very useful, as the system will inform host if there are any enemy attacks or unwanted guests in the host territories. That's good then. Landon looked at the map and decided to draw a circle around Baymard. He made sure to add at least 20-meter difference between the city walls and the surroundings. Once he was done, a pop-up screen appeared. Would you like to view your selected territory on the monitor? He was excited. With a monitor, could check every area in Baymard without being there in person. This is extremely useful for times when he might have to leave the territory for urgent matters. He clicked on yes and viewed the city. Looking at the monitor, it resembled a regular flat screen TV. He could see people fishing on the sea coast, people farming inside the city, people going out to hunt, the city walls, the castle, and so on. He was satisfied with this mapping function in the system. Baymard was divided into 3 regions: the upper regions, the central regions, and the lower regions. As he passed through the upper region of the city, he saw various estates. There were 16 estates that each had at least 6 stone mansions and 10 small buildings on them. These mansions were extremely huge, having their own courtyards and servant quarters. Each estate was surrounded by a 4-foot fence. A person standing next to the fence could see the entire estate without stressing themselves. If we're back on Earth, each of these mansions could be used to open a major university. They were big, but not as big as his castle. At least there are no nobles in the city to bother me. The city lord used to stay in Landon's castle, while these other estates belonged to the barons and dukes. Once they heard that Baymard will no longer be under the protection of Arcadina, they all fled to the capital. They didn't want to serve Landon, so they left. What a joke, serving a 15-year-old prince who has no power. In their eyes, he was trash, a prince with only 330 soldiers. They were always stronger than him physically and had a larger number of knights under their wings. In his world, strength is everything. They knew that Landon had been exiled along with his family to Baymard. Staying would only bring the wrath of the king onto them. Choosing to serve Landon would be stabbing the king in his back. Besides, they didn't want to lend any of their knights to aid in protecting Baymard. If a war broke out between Baymard and any neighboring cities, there would be no reinforcements coming in to help them. Coupled with the lack of food in the territory, it was not a risk they were willing to take. They knew that the king was indirectly saying, I want Prince Landon out of Arcadina, and if anyone helps him, they would face the consequences. Once Landon and his men left the upper region, they arrived at the central part of Baymard. This region was where the villagers lived. As the group moved through the city, they greeted the villagers and aided any who needed any form of assistance. Landon kept observing his surroundings. Compared to the houses in the capital, these ones could easily be destroyed in harsh weather conditions. From his memories, the houses in the capital were all made from stone and wood, making them sturdy and long-lasting. But the houses in Baymard were made of sticks, straw, and mud. They all had frameworks made of timber. Their walls are made of a dried mixture of woven twigs and mud, and their roofs made of straw. These houses were typically called mud brick houses. No wonder it was reported that Baymard had the highest death rate in Arcadina. He thought, looking at the roads here, they were not as good as the ones in the upper region. There were patches of mud on the ground and a lot of potholes on the roads. On their way to the lower regions, they saw a group of men carrying bows and arrows hoping to get some meat for their families, women carrying water, and children running around and playing. Once they reached the lower levels, it was all vegetation and farmlands. Landon could see over 300 fields, but only about 5 people on them. It was clear to see that even the people believed that their lands were barren. Looking west from the fields, Landon was surprised to see 2 giant estates. He then turned to the east from the fields, and only one gigantic estate there. Landon's interest was piqued. He turned to the Lucius and the group. Why would nobles leave the upper region to build their estates here? Don't you find it very strange? Indeed, my king, Lucius said, and everyone else nodded. My king, maybe they found something valuable in this lower region and decided to stay here, said a shy knight. The knight had blonde hair and dark brown eyes. If he were on Earth, he would look like a K-pop artist. He had no muscles and looked incredibly weak like a twig. Landon was not worried because once he started training them, they gained a lot of muscles. The knight's voice showed a hint of shyness and fear. It was clear that he lacked any confidence in himself. What's your name, age, rank, and captain? Landon asked. Billy Vane, age 17, squire under Captain Mark. My king. Billy, that was an excellent suggestion. There might be things there that could help us better the kingdom. Excellent, Landon said while smiling. Inwardly, Landon was shocked that Billy was 17 years old. He really looked like a 14-year-old boy. Billy was extremely excited to be complimented by the king. One had to know that when he spoke, he was shaking like a leaf. Seeing his highness in high spirits, he felt more confident in himself. The other knights also nodded and thought that what Billy said made sense. After all, even the villagers didn't stay here. So why would nobles? It all seemed very sketchy and questionable. Let's go west first. I'm curious to know why they needed 2 estates there, compared to the east. The first estate they stepped into was located on a hill. As they stepped in, Landon was stunned by what he saw. It looked a pack of ferocious lions clawed their way out of the estate. The courtyard had several pieces of broken equipment on the floor. The left boot of a shoe was found floating in a pond at the center of the courtyard. A trail of grain could be seen from the courtyard trailing into the estate. Looking at the floor more closely, he spotted a woman's undergarment by the trail of grain, a ripped painting in the flower beds, and what looked like roasted fish. Were they so scared of my father's wrath that much that they had to throw away their meal? He thought. Landon and his men were all stupidly confused. Just what is going on? Nothing here adds up, they thought. In one of the courtyards, they saw large quantities of ash scattered all over the floor, and traces of twigs and swords with bloodstains on them could also be seen. They searched through every mansion on the estate and couldn't find anything valuable. Just as they were about to leave, Landon saw a cave at the back of the estate. Once they reached the entrance of the cave, the men put their hands on their sheath in preparation for any sudden danger. The entrance of the cave looked like it came straight out of a Lord of the Rings movie. Landon was just waiting for Samir the White to pop up from thin air. The cave had molybdenum, trona, and feldspar stones on the walls and ceilings. The people on this continent only knew the uses of molybdenite. Molybdenite was used to increase the corrosion resistance on swords, armor, and any silvery objects. This was the era of swords. Thousands of swords were forged daily in this world. This was for sure a rare treasure. On the other hand, people used trona and feldspar as decorative stones in the continent. In their eyes, these two were just regular stones, completely worthless. But to Landon, who came from Earth, they were priceless. Trona could be used in glass making, paper, detergents, textiles. The list is so long. This was truly a huge win for them. The cave was so big that Landon thought they would easily get lost if they kept going forward. So they decided to leave. The second estate stood on another hill, 700 meters away from the first. Walking in, the estate was far cleaner than the first. It was truly stunning. Landon was in awe. They found bags of planting seeds and wheat in the kitchens, a ton of armor, swords, and also a courtyard scattered with ash and bloodstains. Moving towards the back of the estate, they found another cave entrance. Once they stepped into the cave, they saw a lot of iron ores. This was an iron ore mine. To think they had such things here. Everyone became excited again and kept wondering why no one in the Empire knew of this mine. They looked around for a while before deciding to head to the other estate on the other side of the farms. The estate was a lot smaller compared to the other two out west. Searching the mansions, they still found a lot of seeds, armor, and swords. Like the other two estates, they found a courtyard with a large quantity of ash on the floor and a cave at the back of the estate. This cave had a lot of mineral pigments and iron oxides on the walls and ceilings. Looking at the walls, Landon could see red ochre, yellow ochre, unbeer, saltpeter, and limestones. In this world, people used these ores to make various pigments for paint. Only royalty, potential women were selected for harems, and wealthy people could have their portraits painted. Some peasants could live out their entire lives and never have their portraits taken. Everything about painting was expensive. If people in the Empire knew that Landon had this, they would cough out blood heavily and wage a full-scale war against him. As the men all thought of the benefits of having paint, Landon had his own thoughts. System: are the other mineral ores important? Answering host: saltpeter is the main ingredient for making gunpowder. It can also be used in making fireworks, rockets, food preservatives, and can also be used as plant fertilizer. For the other ores, they can be used as pigments for cosmetics and future inventions. Limestone can be used as soil conditioner, aggregates in concrete animal fillers, and so on. The possibilities are endless. Landon became excited after listening to the system. He looked at the cave and thought, oh my God, there's actually large quantities of saltpeter on the walls and ceilings. Looking at the white crystalline cones on the ceiling and the walls, he felt like Scrooge McDuck. He even started smiling stupidly. In truth, saltpeter ores looked like frozen snow cones on the ceilings in winter. He was reminded of the Disney movie Frozen when he saw this. There was no way he would let it go. This people on the continent didn't know what the uses of these ores were. But thanks to the system and his previous life, he now knew the importance of these ores. Although he was happy now, he knew he had a long way to go, especially when looking at the ores. He needed to find ways to extract the elements from the rocks. On Earth, these ores would have been processed using very acidic compounds. There were no distillation columns, pipes, or tanks here. This was very stressful to him. Even thinking about it, he couldn't help but knit his brows. Take cosmetics, for example. Although he had the pigments for it, he needed to produce castor oil, glycerin, hydrolyzed cornstarch, water, sodium chloride, oleal alcohol, and so on. He needed at least 12 different ingredients here. He truly felt cheated. For every major invention, he just had one ingredient here. But he needed to be grateful for what he had at least. He started thinking of how he could use the ores. That's right, I saw a lot of slate stones around the territory. Now that I have enough raw materials, I can make a chalkboard. He thought as they walked in deeper. When they exited the cave, Landon faced his men and asked, what do you all think about this situation? The reports don't say anything about these 3 mines that we found. From the looks at it, the barons and the city lord might have been the only ones who knew about it, Gary answered. That may not be entirely true, since they needed workers for the mines. Do you suppose they used the villagers? Josh asked. No. They would be digging their graves if they did that. Remember, they went through a lot means to painstakingly hide the resources from the Empire so that they could fill their pockets. Lucius said, right, if they told anyone else, they would be dead men walking. As it stands right now, they won't be able to tell the king about the resources in Baymard any longer, said Mark. Why? Asked the young knight. They've been here for many years, and in that time frame, they never reported any resources they found in Baymard. Lying to the king is the same as taking the king for a fool. The penalty is death. Mark answered. All the other knights gasped. Also, if King Bar knew that he had bestowed a land of fortune to our King Landon, he would kill them for sure. Josh added, I'm guessing if he really knew, he wouldn't have given the land to King Landon. Said another knight. Everyone nodded. They probably brought in their own workers in fear that their secret would be found out. If the villagers knew of it, they would probably fight for some resources so they could sell and feed their families. Said Trey, that may be the case. After all, since we've been in the lower region, we haven't seen any people walking around. Since the people believe the land is barren, they don't come here anymore. And even if they did come, the mines are a great walking distance from their farmlands. Said Lucius. Also, don't forget that the entrance and exit from Batmerd is located in the central region, so no one really needs to be here. Gary added. Everyone agreed as well. My guess is that they burnt all the workers when realized how serious their situation was. Landon said, that would explain all the blood stains and ash we found in all 3 estates. After all, there's no guarantee that the workers would keep their secret forever. The only way to bury the secret was silencing the workers permanently. Trey added, they had to admit, the city lord and the barons put a lot of thought into their plans. They didn't think there would be a day when they would have to leave Baymard for good. They truly didn't see it coming. Since we are done, let's move to the seacoast. Landon said, the central region of Baymard was like the midpoint of a compass. Moving eastwards from the central region, one would reach the upper regions of Baymard, and in the west, you would reach the lower region. Likewise, to the north of the central regions was the entrance/exit to Baymard, and in the south, the sea coastline entrance. Once they arrived at the coastline, Landon and his men saw a lot of villagers fishing, while some were carrying baskets of fish on their heads. They spoke to the villagers, aided them, and left to inspect the city walls and the forest by the entrance of Baymard. Once we're outside Baymard, Landon looked at the walls carefully. He had to admit, the walls were pretty formidable. The walls were in perfect conditions. Moving into the surrounding forests, they heard a shrilled shout and the sound of a sword hitting something. Ah! Ting! Ting! There was a little boy who looked not older than 8, trying to kill a giant wild boar. The boy had light, bright eyes and deep red hair. Just as the wild boar was about to strike him down, the boy shut his eyes tightly, as if accepting death. He waited and was surprised. He didn't feel any pain. Opening his eyes, he was stunned to see a group of knights and a dead wild boar on the ground. Thank you, sirs, the boy said. What's your name? Landon asked smilingly. Once the boy saw Landon's genuine smile, he knew they were friendly. My name is Momo Lai. Sir, who are you? Momo asked curiously. I'm the new king and lord of Baymard, Landon. The boy was shocked and frightened. My king, sorry for not greeting you earlier. It's all right, besides I'm more worried about you. Mosley was shocked. His Highness is worried about me, he thought. Mono, why were you here alone? Don't you know how dangerous it is? Landon asked. I live alone with my elder sister, my king. Our parents died when I was just 4 summers old. Sister told me they died because of the cold. Sister recently got very sick. I know that for her to get better, she needs a lot of meat, so I came to hunt. Landon and the men were sad on hearing this. Although there were some of the men were bullied in the capital, none of them had ever starved or seen someone die of cold. They vowed that they would work hard in order to protect the people. In fact, Landon took pity on them too. In his previous life, he orphaned, so seeing Momo struggle, he felt he should assist him. From now on, your sister will be my adopted sister, you will be my adopted brother, and I will call you little Momo. You and my new sister will move into the castle immediately. From now on, that will be your new home. Landon said. Momo couldn't believe it. This was the king. Although Momo was 8 years old, He knew when people were kind or tried to help him. He could tell that Landon was a good person. Landon introduced Momo to Lucius and the other knights. Everyone started teasing Momo, making him blush. "Little Momo, let's go take my new sister home." They carried the boar and left the forest. Landon, Momo, and the men stood outside a tiny house. They could hear tiny cough sounds coming from inside. Landon went in with Momo, Josh, and Lucius. Sister, I brought food for you," Momo yelled as he ran into the house. Landon and group waited in the living room area. When Momo stepped into the bedroom room, he saw a frail but extremely beautiful girl laying on a straw bed. She had fiery red hair, light brown eyes, and a petite frame. "Sister, the king is here to see you." Grace nearly fell out of the bed when she heard Momo. "Momo, did you get into any trouble? Why would the king want to see me?" Grace asked questionably. Momo then narrated the entire story to Grace. "Then let me thank His Highness then," she said as she tried to stand up. "Sister, he said that when you're ready he would come in." She nodded and Momo went out. A few seconds later, Momo, Landon, Lucius, and Josh walked. "Your Highness," she said as bowed her head. Looking at the tiny girl in front of him, Landon was sure she was 19 years old. In truth, she looked like a mini version of Urze's Scarlet Titania from Fairy Tale. "Please be at ease. You're my big sister after all," he said gently with a smile on his face. Grace was taken aback by his words, and after a while she relaxed. She found that what Momo said was true. He was really a kind fellow. He was somewhat cute, with his big white eyes. He looked like a cute bunny rabbit, she thought. "My name is Landon. This is Commander Lucius, and this is Captain Josh. May I know your name, elder sister?" As Josh looked at the girl in front of him, he almost forgot to breath. Although she looked sick, she was incredibly gorgeous. Her red hair and petite frame made her look like a fairy. The more he looked at her, the more he blushed. The same thing could be said for Grace. She had a hard time taking her eyes off Josh. She had never felt this way before. She blushed so hard that her already light red face turned deep red. Of course, Lucius and Landon noticed all these and couldn't help chuckling inwardly. "My name is Grace Lai. Grace, since I already take you as part of my family, I cannot bear to let you stay here with Momo on your own. For the safety of you two, please move into the palace with us." Landon asked. "Your Highness, please call little Landon," Landon said smilingly. "Little Landon, I'll go with you." Momo was so happy that he jumped on the bed and gave his sister a big hug. "Captain Josh, help Sister Grace pack up here. Commander Lucius, little Momo, and myself will pack up in the dining area." Josh was stunned. He turned and saw Lucius and Landon chuckling. He turned his head back to Grace. She kept looking towards the floor, but it was clear that she tried to hide her blush. She was so cute. Josh smiled and thought, "These bastards, they even have the nerve to give me a thumbs up." Luckily, she didn't see anything. It would have been so embarrassing. Once they got home, Landon told his mom and Lucy all that happened. They warmly welcomed Momo and Grace into their family. Little Momo and Grace were given rooms close to each other. They were also close to Lucy and Kim's rooms. Landon gave the job of training Momo as a night page to Josh. Momo was 8 now, so it was the perfect time to train him. Although 7 years old was the appropriate age in the continent. He sat on his bed and tried to go to sleep. Tomorrow was a busy day for him. He had to train with the men in the morning and then head out to the farms to solve the barren land situation. As he laid on his bed, his eyes became heavy with fatigue and his mind drifted to sleep. The next day, Landon stood in the center of the inner courtyard facing over 300 men. He was impressed. If he were back on Earth, it would be about 5 a.m. now, and yet all the men were up and ready. None of them came late. Even Momo showed up early. He knew that for his plan to work, he needed to discipline them well. He looked at them coldly, giving off an aura of an old war veteran. "Line up in straight lines of 10. He started counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 52. They all formed their teams. Under 52 seconds waited for his next command. "Too slow. Lines should be formed by the time I count to 5. From today onwards, anyone who isn't fast in lining up will run 10 laps around the courtyard before training begins. Is that understood?" "Yes, King Landon." During training, I will be your commander and not your king. When answering to me, you will all say, Sir, yes, sir. Say it. Landon yelled. Sir, yes, sir. They yell back. There are 4 military disciplines to follow while training. These rules are to be followed only when you are in training. First, I am the law here. Second, obey my orders. Third, unconditionally obey my orders. Fourth, when I am not around, obey Commander Lucius' orders. The men were taken aback by his opposing aura that sent chills down their spines. Is that understood? Sir, yes, sir. He did warm-up exercises with them for 10 minutes and stopped. He watched and waited for them to catch their breaths. After 1 minute, he yelled, Line up behind your assigned night captains. They immediately got up and looked for the captains in a flash. No one wanted to be punished. They all lined up behind Josh, Mark, and Gary. Momo lined up behind Josh since he was told that Josh would train him. In fact, Lucius was impressed. He had always struggled when disciplining young knights. This was a real eye-opener to him. After these exercises, you all should have realized how weak you are physically. You all lack stamina and strength. At this point, they all came to the conclusion that their king was a demon trainer. He had joined them in training earlier, and yet he stood there looking back at them as if this was a casual walk. They had to admit their king was pretty strong. Actually, when the system cured him previously, it also gave him extra strength when he took the system starter pack. Staring at their tired faces without any hint of emotions, he continued. Captains Josh, Mark, and Gary stepped forward. They stepped out and looked at Landon. You all will lead your teams in becoming stronger. You will face challenges together and ensure that no soldier falls behind. If anyone in your team fails, it would mean that you also failed. Do you understand? Sir, yes, sir, answered the 3. They stepped back and stood in front of their respective teams. Listen up. Everybody squat down with your feet in a wide stance, hands clasped behind your back. Although they were confused, they hurriedly did it. Even Lucius, who was standing by the sides, decided to join in. He wanted to experience this new exercise. Holding this squatting position, jump to move forward. You are all to do this 10 times around the courtyard. Little Momo will be required to do only 4 rounds. Hearing this, the soldiers thought that this exercise would be a breeze. Even little Momo and Lucius was doubting the effects of this kind of exercise. How could Landon not know what they were thinking of? Back on Earth, he thought the same thing too, the first time he saw how the 3 exercise was done. Landon walked to the very back of the lines besides Lucius and squatted down. Then he yelled coldly, Start. Once they started, everyone was excited. They thought they would finish it fast and be done. After a while, they were breathing heavily and their throats were dry. Most of them were proud of their strength before, but now they couldn't help but look at their weak bodies. Even Lucius started to feel the burn, but he knew he couldn't stop. Gary felt like he was about to die. His heavy arms and tired legs started wobbling. Momo felt the burn in the legs and thighs. Does this mean I'm weak? He thought. From the back, seeing people feeling tired, Landon spoke out. If you give up so easily, are you real soldiers? Are you real men? Get up. This is an order. My command is law. When they heard him at the back, they all had one thought. Demon trainer. As the training progressed, their thighs felt numb. Every time they wanted to quit, they would hear the devil's voice from behind. Those that give up will be face my wrath. If you want to see, hey, try me. As they looked at little Momo, they were truly envious of the fact that he had finished his rounds. Trey truly felt like his legs were going to RIP off his circuits. As he thought of his best friend Landon, he wondered where he had learnt this sort of demonic training from. Trey thought that Landon made the training up on the spot. In fact, no one suspected that Landon was different. He had always been a very weird child. He was always too quiet growing up, a little introverted. When people would bully or insult him, he would just watch. He never really cared about how they treated him. He never cried or showed any form of worry. So they all thought this was still him. As the exercise progressed, everybody gave it their all since no one wanted to do any of the devil's punishments. Once they were done, they all dropped to the floor like flies. Everyone was dead tired. Their thighs felt sore and their hands felt heavy. Some were lying on the ground, while others were kneeling down, trying to catch their breath. Some even tried to sleep for a minute. while the ones that were awake started looking at the main culprit who caused them to be in this state. In fact, they almost thought he wasn't human. He had been doing these exercises with them, and yet he looked the same as he was before the exercise. Once everyone caught their breaths and became more relaxed, Landon spoke. "Line up." Once they heard the devil's call, they all jumped for their lives, lining behind their captains. Even those who were almost asleep woke up and acted like shinobis as they desperately tried to find the captains. In fact, Landon was sure that after this day, most people would literally stick closer to their captains like glue. Landon chuckled secretly. The men followed him in training for the next 45 minutes. They did sit-ups, duck walks, leg stretching, front kicks, normal kicks, side kicks, back kicks, and roundhouse kicks. All these exercises were new to them. When they were done, he allowed them to rest for a bit. While they were resting, a maid came over and spoke to him in a very low, whispery tone. "You will all follow me in straight lines for breakfast. Your breakfast will be served every morning at this exact time. If you're absent for breakfast because you were of your duty or sickness, you need not worry. The staff will make sure to deliver your food wherever you are in Baymard. Now follow me." As they followed him into the dining area, they saw 12 maids, his mother, Lucy, Grace, and 12 giant pots of food. On the side of the pots were a lot of plates and spoons. The dining hall looked exactly like the meal hall in Harry Potter, if not bigger. "You have an hour." As soon as they heard the Demon King, they quickly rushed up one by one to get their meals. With 12 pots stationed and 12 maids serving the food, within 20 minutes everyone had food on their plates. Water was then brought out and served to the men. Those who finished their food earlier could go for a second round if they weren't satisfied. The only issue was that it had to be done within the time frame Landon had set for them. He brought little Momo with him and joined Lucius, Lucy, Grace, and his mom for breakfast. Looking at the cute, tired Momo, Lucy, Kim, and Grace lightly pinched his cheeks. "Little Momo, is it too stressful for you? You don't have to work that hard. Auntie will take care of you," Kim said while smiling at him. "That's right. When sister gets strong, she will feed you and take care of you," Grace said while nodding her head. "You just tell big sister when you want to stop." "Okay," Lucy added. "Auntie, elder sister, Sister Lucy, I'm fine. Brother Landon took good care of me when we were training. I want to get strong," Momo replied. "My cute little Momo, so cute," Kim said while rubbing his head. "My little man is so cute," Grace said while lightly pinching his jaw. "Little Momo, you are so adorable," Lucy said while lightly pinching his other cheeks. Momo turned and saw Lucius and Landon holding in their laughters. He felt wronged. No man wanted to hide behind women forever. What would people say? He looked at his arms and thought, "Cute? Adorable? No. No. No." Father Landon was right. "Right now I'm too weak." Once the time was up, Landon yelled, "Line up and move out." In the minds of the men, the words "line up" was their devil commander's favorite words, and their worst. They were pretty sure they would have nightmares of the king chasing them while saying, "Line up." When they returned to the courtyard, Landon continued. 2 weeks from now, all teams will compete with each. The strongest in each team would be made second in command to their team captains. Also, those who prove themselves will be promoted on the spot. Everyone was surprised and excited. Everyone is required to practice their swordsmanship for at least an hour a day. There will be 3 sessions, one after breakfast, one after lunch, and one right before dinner. He looked at them seriously and continued. "For today, we will train in swordsmanship now. And right after training, Commander Lucius will give you all your responsibilities. Some of you might need to guard an entrance, checking for spies, while others will work in the city." Everyone listened attentively. Landon took his sword from the ground and smiled at them, making them extremely confused. "As of now, I'm not your commander. Commander Lucius is. Right now, his word is the law. I'm just a knight in training." They almost coughed up blood. "Who are you trying to deceive with those innocent looks? One minute you're a demon, and the next minute you're an angel? Oh, thank goodness. At least now, we don't need to be alert all the time." They all sighed from relief. Some even tried to sit on the floor. Lucius looked at them and knew that they needed discipline. "And who said you could sit?" "Those who broke out of formation. Step out and give 5 me 100 push-ups each. Captain Josh, start training Page Momo. The rest of you take out your swords." Let's train, said Lucius. Sir, yes, sir. They all yelled back, including Landon. They couldn't help but sigh. From the frying pan to the fire. From one demon king to another. At the same time, Lucius was happy with the positive responses he was getting. The men were more attentive and did things more diligently. I can get used to this, he thought. By the time training was done, it was already 9 a.m. The men all went to their assigned posts. Landon decided to take Momo, Lucy, and Trey to the farmlands in the lower areas. Looking at the farms, he could roughly estimate that there were at least 300 farms. The whole place looked like one of those industrial plantations on Earth. There were 3 farmers on the land. When they saw Landon coming over, they rushed over to meet him halfway. Good day, my lord. They replied with a hint of fear in their voices. Good day to you all. I wonder if you guys could tell me about the land here? I was hoping that I might be of assistance to you all. Landon said, while smiling. My lord, may we ask who you are? Asked an elderly man. Landon could see that this man was like the leader of the pack. Everyone sort of hid behind him while talking. I am the new king of Baymard, King Landon. This is my personal knight Trey, my friend Lucy, and I'm guessing you all know little Momo here. Please be at ease. I only wish to help. The farmers looked at Landon curiously. This was the first time they had ever seen or heard of a king who wanted to aid in farming. May I know your names as well? Landon asked. Your Highness, my name is Pat, this is Lior, and this is Waldo. We are farmers here in Baymard, said Pat, as he introduced everyone. Pat was a strong 42-year-old man with rich black hair and light green eyes. On the other hand, 37-year-old Lior had blonde hair with light brown eyes. And 36-year-old Waldo had ink black hair with dark brown eyes. Your Highness, we have been farming in this land for more than 20 years now. The land is very barren. The growth of our crops are stunted and our yields are sparse, said Pat. Searching through his mind, he knew he had to determine the soil type in order to fix the problem. Don't worry. By tomorrow, I will give you the solution to the problem. Meet me here, same time tomorrow morning. Landon replied. Yes, Your Highness. Although they agreed, they really didn't believe that he had a solution. After all, they had been farming all their lives while he had been living in luxury. Their fathers farmed on this land, and now they did too. Since they could remember, the land had always been barren. They chose to keep farming because they genuinely loved everything about it. It felt like an accomplishment seeing something they planted sprouting out of the ground. Although the yields weren't high, they felt joy in doing their profession. So when His Highness said that he would give them a solution, they were taken aback and of course had doubts about this so-called solution. They decided to wait and see. Landon walked away from the men, poured some water onto the soil, and waited. He observed that the water drained quickly. This was a good sign. He then grabbed a handful of soil and softly compressed it in his fist. The soil felt smooth and could hold its shape for a short period of time. So far, so good, he thought. Landon then took 3 handfuls of topsoil from the ground and went back to the castle. Once in the castle, Landon filled a white jade wine basin with water and poured the soil into it. He then stirred it vigorously until all clumps of soil had dissolved. He then decided to place the basin by the window overnight. In fact, it would have been best to use a transparent glass jar. But too bad, glass hadn't been invented yet. He decided that in the future, he would teach the farmers and villagers everything he knew about farming. Knowledge is power, he thought. The more people that knew the right ways to farm, the better the crop yields in Baymard. System, can you give me a copy of the farming book for my starter pack? Answering host. No. If host wants a copy, host should write it out himself. The system replied. Aren't you supposed to be an all-powerful and mighty technology system? Landon grumbled. It is exactly because the system is all-powerful and mighty that your request was rejected. The system is not a photocopying machine, host. Landon was speechless. What a shameless system, he thought. So how can you help me then? Host can use the system's space-time capsules. Once host eats the capsule, host will be transported into the system space. 1 hour in the outside world is equivalent to 5 days in the system's space. The system emotionlessly replied. Landon was excited. With this, he could write down the entire book in hours. System, I want to use the space-time capsule, he said excitedly. Host does not have enough experience, technology, or bonus points to use the space-time capsule. Landon didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then why did you tell me about the capsule? Landon asked, almost wishing he could kill the stupid system. The system thought it was the appropriate time to tell the host. Landon massaged the temples on his forehead, trying for calm down. How much time is contained in one capsule? And how many points do I need before I can use the capsule? Answering host. One capsule is equivalent to 1 hour in the real world. For host to buy a space capsule, host needs any of these points. 10 technology points, 5 experience points, or 2 bonus points, the system replied. Since I don't have any at the moment, what do I do? The system suggests that the host invents something, so as to get the bonus points. Landon's eyes lit up. That's it. I'll make a blackboard, he thought. The next day, after training, he went to his bedside window and observed the contents in the basin. He took a spoon and carefully checked if the soil had any layers. At the very bottom was sand, the middle layer had silt, and the top layer had clay. This was loamy soil. It was the perfect soil for agriculture. It was a mixture of sand, silt, and clay. If the problem wasn't with the soil itself, then there could only be one reason: lack of nutrients and organic matter. As Landon looked into the basin, he realized that the water residue was clear in color and not a lot of organic sediments could be seen floating at the top. This was a bad sign. Typically, rich soil leaves murky-colored water with a lot of organic sediments floating around. The solution is simple. The soil needs manure. Actually, this problem would have been solved decades ago if the people in this continent knew what manure was. The most important thing to know is that soil is alive. There are more species of organisms in the soil than there are above ground. These organisms convert soil minerals and organic matter to vitamins and hormones needed for the plant. So for more than a decade, these people have been starving the soil. Obviously, these organisms would either die or move away. It's that simple. Soil needs to eat too. In fact, Baymard wasn't the only place where the lands were said to be barren. There are so many small towns that had this problem. The reason Baymard was well known was because it was the third biggest city in the empire. For more than 40 years, it had been barren. From the reports he received, people claimed that one day, the land turned barren. Some people even said it was a cursed plan. Of course, Landon didn't believe in all those stories. It definitely didn't happen overnight. Everyone gave up on the place, as it was deemed worthless to the empire. As the saying goes, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. Baymard's size was comparable to Tokyo, Japan back on Earth. Imagine if the entire Tokyo turned to barren lands and there was no food too. Of course, it'd make headlines. Landon also wanted to introduce crop rotation. Doing this would definitely increase soil fertility, soil nutrients, and crop yield. Crop rotation would also reduce stressful weeds and soil pollution. It was a good method for maintaining the soil structure. Having come up with a solution, he took a lot of bags and buckets, leaving again with Momo, Lucy, Terry, and 3 other knights. On their way to the lower region, they stopped at the stables and got animal feces and then got water from the wells. They also picked up a lot of mosses, grass, and dead tree skin and put in bags, as well as cooked discarded fruits, vegetables, and vegetable peelings. Lower region, if Baymard. Mix everything together and put on the soil. Landon said. Everyone looked at him as if he was mad. Wouldn't doing this make the soil rotten? They thought. Even though they were thinking that, they did it anyway. Water the farm beds. Remember not to flood it. Doing so will make the soil hard. They quickly went along to do what he said. Now we wait. In the next couple of days, you all will follow the exact procedure done just now. When you get a process, come and find me. Landon said. Everyone nodded, as they too were curious to know the results of this little experiment. Once everything was done, Landon decided find a carpenter for the blackboard. Since it would take time for the crops to show any signs of recovery, he decided to open a school in the meantime. For now, he decided to teach all the children and villagers on how to read and write in Pyrrhan, language used in the Empire, and how to do math. He had already decided to ask Lucy to assist in teaching Pyrrhan, while Kim and himself would teach math. Although both women knew basic addition and subtraction, Multiplication and division would be hard for them to do. Hence he decided to break math into two parts. Math 1, addition and subtraction, and Math 2, multiplication and division. Kim would Math 1 and in Math 2. Of course, both math classes would start off with basic understanding of numbers. They would have to make sure the villagers knew how to count before they started addition or multiplication. He also planned on teaching both women math every night from now on. He hoped that one of them could take over his duty as the second math teacher very soon. There were quite a handful of literate people living in the central region. From the reports, he knew there were a few alchemists, welders, and so on, who were literate. It would be a good idea to find these people and use them in teaching others. After all, he can't teach everything. He decided to follow the same schooling system that exists back on Earth. No matter how old or young the villagers were, those who were not literate would begin at kindergarten. They were to learn how to read, write, simple add numbers, and so on. As the saying goes, you're never too old to go to school. In fact, Landon remembered that back in his university days, there was a 50-year-old man who was in the class with him. He was so astonished and had deeply respected the man. Not everyone had the guts to go to school at such an age. Most people were either ashamed or very prideful. The situation in Baymard was very tricky. Everyone went out to either hunt, fish, cook, farm, and so on. Because he didn't want to disrupt their daily lives, he decided to make a teaching schedule for the town. He would have morning sessions and late afternoon sessions. All illiterate villagers were required to attend at least one session a day. All villagers below the age of 18 were required to attend the morning classes, while those above 18 could choose to attend any session they liked. Morning sessions would have 6 classes, 3 taking place at the same time. He decided to break the children down into 3 groups: those below 7, those below 13, and those above 13. Lucy would teach Pyron to those below 7. Kim would teach Math 1 to those below 13, while he would teach Math 2 to those above 13 at the same time. Once their classes was done, they would just take the next set of children. Landon thought all these things as he made his way to the center region in search of a carpenter. Whitewood City, standing by the castle walls of Whitewood Castle, a stillhouse could be seen looking over their city. The man had dark black hair and an overconfident smile on his face. However, hidden deep within his inky black eyes, a hint of anxiety could also be seen. Eli Barn looked at his most trusted knight, Zarius, half kneeling in front of him, and asked. When Zarius arrived earlier, he gave a letter to Eli while doing his salute. Without opening the letter, Eli asked, "Is it done?" "Rest assured, my lord. We made sure that His Highness Landon was poisoned with Nallet Wisp before he left the capital." Zarius replied, "Perfect. How long will it take for my trash of a brother to die?" "My lord, this poison is a slow, deadly one. There is no cure for this poison. It will kill him in 5 months' time. By then no one would even suspect my lord for His Highness Landon's death. I left no evidence, my lord." "Ha ha ha ha. Good. Zarius, you have done well. That stupid brother of mine is the disgrace of my royal family, even if they found out I did it. So what? Father wouldn't care much. Hi. He's already a dead man walking. After all, everyone would think he got killed fighting over food or something." Eli said while smiling and laughing. Zarius looked at his lord with a confused gaze. Why had his lord gone through all the trouble just to kill Landon Barn? Everyone knew he would die sooner or later, so why the rush? "My lord, why kill him?" Eli looked at Zarius and smirked. "I need his land as a secret base for my knights. I plan to be king within the next year and a half. The sooner that buffoon of a brother dies, the better. As for father, he would never suspect me of anything. So I'll take advantage of that and kill him when he least suspects it." A trace of violence flashed in his pupils as he spoke. Zarius looked at his lord in surprise. It was a genius idea. Even if they killed Landon Barn, they wouldn't let the Empire know. By doing so, they could secretly use his territory as a base to gather and train more knights. King Barn sent his officials as spies to all parts of the Empire. There are tons of spies in Eli's territory. The only way to train or get more knights without the king's knowledge was to use Landon's territory. It was the perfect location. King Barn had made his officials leave Baymard, so as to prove that he wouldn't support the territory. The king believed that Landon would never pose a threat to him, so he didn't see the need to send spies over there, hence making Baymar the ideal location. Also, King Barn had made sure that no one controlled more knights than he did in the Empire. If the king knew Eli wanted to train and gather more knights, it wouldn't be long before he guessed what his son was up to. At that point, King Barn would definitely kill Eli. The funny thing is that Eli is already the crown prince and his father's most favored son. So doing all this was really unnecessary. Greed is a fatal human flaw after all. Zarius' entire body trembled while looking at his lord, Prince Eli. His Highness sure is vicious, he thought. What about the assassins we caught earlier? Eli asked. My lord, 5 of them killed themselves, but 2 survived and 1 escaped. From what we gathered, your second and third brothers are working together to get rid of you, my lord. Zarius replied. Eli smiled coldly. So, they plan to get rid of me first before killing each other over the throne? Not bad, brothers. My lord, should we send our men to retaliate against them? Zarius asked. Eli shook his head while saying, No need. Doing so would only alert my father and make things difficult for us as well. Don't forget our new goal, 1.5 years before I become king. Anyway, it's only my brothers. What harm could those cubs pose to a full-grown lion? Let's see how long they can keep this up, shall we? I don't mind being a star in their play. Eli remembered that he hadn't opened the letter in his hand yet. He opened it slowly and began to read it. My sister Jeanette wants to visit me from the capital. My. This family just gets better and better, Eli said with a smile. My lord, do you think she knows that the assassination attempt failed? Zarius asked. I doubt that she would know. I'm sure my brothers haven't seen her yet and won't pass such serious information on paper. Most likely, she's just probing to see if I'm still alive. I should reply here no? Zarius smiled and replied. It's only proper, my lord. Eli smiled while looking over the city once more and thought. It won't be before I rule the entire empire. By then, all of them would die for sure. Draper's city, in a well-lit fancy room. 3 men could be seen talking to each other. 2 of the men were sitting down, while the other was half-kneeling as a form of respect. Are you sure the rest killed themselves? Asked Conabarn. Yes, your highness. While escaping, I saw it with my own very eyes, the escaped assassin replied. You may leave now. Connor replied with a cold voice. Yes, my lords. After they made sure that the assassin could no longer be seen, they both looked at each other deeply. Second brother, what do we do now? If father hears about this. He wouldn't let us off, asked James Barn. Relax. I'll send first brother a letter saying that we want to come over for a visit. It will be better to be absolutely sure he doesn't suspect us of it. Connor replied. I agree, James replied. Also, it would be best for you to stay in my territory for the time being. If he really knew, he would try to assassinate us together. They both nodded and decided that this method would be the best way to find out whether Eli knew or not. Landon looked at the tiny stone building in front of him. It was one of the few stone buildings in the central region of Baymard. As he walked in, he observed a short-looking who seemed to be fully immersed in making something. The man looked to be in his late 40s, having deep green eyes and whiskers that curled at the tips. His overgrown beard and monobrow made him look like a dwarf fairy tale character. Landon decided to sit and wait for him to be done while observing the tiny workshop. There were also 6 other people at the back, who seemed to all be around the ages of 18 to 25. They were also fully submerged into their own works. Landon could tell that they were the old man's apprentices. Once the man was done, he looked up and was shocked to see that someone was sitting down waiting for him. He hurriedly wiped his hands on his apron and rushed towards Landon. Sorry, customer. I didn't see you there. I hope you didn't wait for long. I'm Tim Mayers, the owner of this workshop. How may I help you? The man said with a forced smile. Landon could tell that Tim was a kind-hearted man. He could easily see that Tim felt guilty for making him wait. It's all right. I didn't wait for long anyways. I'm here because I want you to aid me in making school supplies, Landon said with a welcoming smile. After observing that Landon was truly not angry, Tim visibly relaxed and had a genuine smile on his face. Are you talking about slate boards and slate pencils, sir? Yes, but I'm talking more about chalkboards. Tim was confused. He didn't know what chalkboards were. In this era, School children used slate boards to practice handwriting and arithmetics without wasting paper. Slate boards were made from slate stone. The boards were about the size of a laptop back on Earth. They were portable, usable, and disposable. Since paper was very expensive in this era, it was more reasonable to write on slate stones. As for slate pencils, Landon really didn't need them as a plan to use chalk instead. Slate pencils were made from softer pieces of slate rock. Slate pencils always left scratch marks on the boards, and the sound they make when used was just utterly terrible. It sounded like nails screeching on a chalkboard. In fact, Landon thought that the sound was just like those shriek sounds in horror movies. Also, when slate pencils were used, the boards would need to be thrown away after a short period of time. That's where chalk has the advantage over slate pencils. Chalk could be easily used without destroying the boards. At the same time, he noticed that teachers didn't write or show their capabilities. They just talked for hours trying to make the students memorize things. Slate stones could only be cut into smaller pieces, so making a very large slate board was near impossible. Hence, he really couldn't fault the teachers for their teaching methods because they didn't have anything like chalkboards, also called blackboards. Of course, in the future, Landon knew that he would upgrade to the popular whiteboards commonly used in universities. Landon looked at the confused Tim and smiled. "Don't worry, I'll guide you on how to make them." Immediately, as Tim heard what Landon said, he nodded and felt reassured. "How many would you need, sir?" "I'll need 60 chalkboards and 2,000 slate boards." Landon planned to line up at least 3 chalkboards in each classroom, just like how his university did. Tim was quite curious about this customer of his. Judging from his clothes, he must be a knight. "So why would a knight need all these?" "Pardon me for asking, sir, but who are you?" Tim asked inquisitively. "A part of my manners. I'm your new king of Baymard, King Landon. I plan to develop Baymard in all aspects of life. I want my people to all be learned. For this, I will need your assistance." Tim was shocked. Weren't all nobles supposed to be snobbish? The young man in front of him was intelligent and very humble. Landon spent the entire day explaining how he needed the chalkboards to look like and what materials were to be used. At the end, they came up with a price range for all the products. Each slate board would cost 7 copper coins, and a chalkboard would cost 4 silver coins. Landon thought those were pretty reasonable price ranges. It was also concluded that a month from now, all the boards would be available. For the chalkboard paint and the actual chalk, he needed the mineral ores in the caves. The next day, he gathered 300 men and appointed Locke Wiggins as the supervisor for digging the ores out, making the paint, and also making the chalkboards. He agreed to pay each worker 400 copper coins, while Chief Wiggins would get 600 copper coins per month. He also arranged for all workers to have meals during their lunch break, which would be cut from their salaries. A plate of food would cost 5 copper coins, so they didn't really mind. A week passed by, and Landon realized that they had collected quite a lot of ores. It was finally time to show Chief Wiggins how to make chalkboard paint and chalk. From the group of 300, 20 men were selected to make blackboard paint, while 80 men would make chalk. Chief Wiggins also appointed 3 new supervisors under him. Hale Verno would supervise ore extraction, Charles Mopey would supervise paint manufacturing, and Javon Stern would supervise chalk making. Of course, Chief Wiggins would oversee everything. Their salaries were also upgraded to 500 copper coins. The last estate Landon went to last time in the lower regions was cleaned and used as the storage facility for all ores and a manufacturing industry for both chalk and paint. The ores were put into different buildings according to their types, and the amount deposited registered at the end of every day. Landon also appointed 5 cooks and 30 knights to guard and protect the workers in case of any unforeseen incidents. Once the first batch of chalkboard paint was made, Landon sent it to Tim Mayers, as well as a sample of chalk. Landon knew that this chalk would be used by both teachers and children. For now, he decided that chalk should be free, but once the economy picked up, he would sell 12 pieces for 10 copper coins. Time flew by very fast, and before he knew it, the last week of the month was here. Just when Landon was about leaving the upper region of Baymard, he saw Waldo running towards him. "My king, the plants have bore fruits." "Ding! Congratulations to host for completing the first task," the system responded. Landon decided that he would check his reward when he went back home at night. For now, he needed to see the results for himself. Landon looked at the overly excited Waldo. Judging from his appearance, Landon could see that Waldo had been crying before. He assumed it was tears of joy. Waldo knelt down in front of him and almost began crying again. "Your Highness, your idea was a success. With the soil not being barren anymore, sniff, we would be able to produce enough food to feed everyone." "Thank you, your Highness. Thank you." Sniff, sniff, Waldo said while trying to hold back his tears. "Please stand. You all are my people and my new family. It is my responsibility to take care of you all," Landon said with a smile. Waldo looked at Landon and was filled with warmth. This is what a ruler should be like, he thought. "Waldo, let us go to the farms and have a look at the fields." "Yes, your Highness," Waldo said with a smile. Once they got to the farmlands, Landon was shocked. He could see tall stalks of wheats. He could see bean sprouts, oats, peas, rye, and tomatoes. In fact, the farms all looked luscious and rich. When everyone saw him coming over, they all smiled and rushed over to him. They were no longer afraid to speak their minds in front of him. In fact, at the middle and end of every week, Landon made sure to come over regularly. He always brought food over and spoke to them as if they were his family. The farmers were stunned at first. Then they later realized that their king didn't care about appearances at all. All of them thought he was wise, intelligent, kind, generous, and most of all humble. "Your Highness," they all greeted and gazed at him as if they were looking at a god. "How are you all? I heard that there are a lot of goodies from the farm this time. You all should make sure not to overwork yourselves. Taking care of one's health is the most important thing after all," Landon said while smiling. They all smiled in return, and Lior stepped forward. "My king, your methods were amazing. I feel like a toddler who is learning farming for the first time," Lior said excitedly. Landon chuckled while looking at their excited faces. "Don't worry. In the future, I will teach you all on everything concerning farming. But for now, we need at least 250 more people here. We will hire people irrespective of gender. Of course, children below the ages of 15 and people above 38 will not be allowed to carry or distribute the goods. They can only work on the fields for health and safety reasons." Everyone nodded in agreement. After all, it would be difficult for the elderly or very young boys or girls to carry those heavy bags of food. This food industry will have Lior as the overseer for all farming activities. Pat will supervise how the workers plant and care for the soil, while Waldo will supervise how much yield we make and the storage of the goods. Pat will be in charge of 150 people, while Waldo will take on 100 people. Again, they all thought that was reasonable. At the end of the day, storage of all goods is to be kept in the second estate on the left of the fields, and the amount recorded. Also, Waldo, would be your job to distribute the goods to the local stores in the central region. We will set reasonable prices for all food items, so everyone can buy them. 10 wagons will be assigned to the farming industry. Use the wagons to send the yields to the estate and the stores in the central region. "Yes, my king," Waldo replied proudly. "There will be also 5 cooks and 20 guards assigned for protecting you all in the fields. You all will also have your lunch breaks in the estate as well." They were all happy that at least they had a place close by to get food. One needed to know that there was quite a good amount of distance between the farmlands and the central region of Baymard. Finally, everyone will receive their salaries from Lior at the end of each month. All workers would earn 400 copper coins. Supervisors get 500 copper coins, and the overseer gets 600 copper coins. Of course, your meals will be taken out of your salaries. It would cost 5 copper coins a plate. Once more, they were truly shocked. All farmers in the empire were paid a measly 250 copper coins per month, but His Highness gave them so much more. They were beaming with joy and really felt grateful towards him. They swore in their hearts that they would work twice as hard and make the best of their new lives. Over the past few weeks, they've been hearing some of the miners brag about how grateful they were to His Highness. He gave them food, jobs, and made them feel safe and cared for. They felt like they would hold their heads up high once again. So what if he wasn't favored in the empire? He was kind and very trustworthy towards all of them. In fact, some people even thought that Landon was the reincarnation of a god sent to help Baymard grow. Landon looked at their happy faces and smiled. Now, let me walk you all to the estate that would represent the future food industry. Once they arrived, the second estate, Landon showed them around while explaining how the estate would be used. He told them about his future plans, so they would know that they were going to share the estate with others soon. Although they didn't understand half of his plans, they believed in him. Hence, they didn't mind sharing with others. This was a man who solved the barren soil issue as if it was nothing. What more could they say? He was working his hardest to make sure that they had food in their bellies. Landon planned to make a section for fishing, production of canned foods, and so on, but that would be in the future. Hence, he needed them to understand that they share this estate with others. He allocated some buildings to the farming department and told them to store foods in different rooms depending on the food types. He also showed them all the seeds he originally found in the estate and asked them to plant some more crops. He would need to get the rest of the seeds he found on the other estates over here later. He thought. Lior had agreed that in 3 days' time, he would gather 250 men to work for the farming industry. Landon could only wait. Once Landon went to his room, he decided to look at his reward for completing his first mission. System, show me my stat and rewards. Host name, Landon Barn. Age, 15. Status, King of Baymard. Level, Beginner, Level 1. Current situation, Healthy. Fixing barren lands and mapping territory with the help of the system completed. Rewards, knowledge on gunpowder and cannon making. Host will also receive 100 development points. Overall points, 100 development points, DP. A pop-up message showed up when he was done reading the information on his screen. Receive rewards, yes or no. Landon accepted it and immediately felt a surge of information flowing into his brain. After using 30 minutes to digest the large amount of information from the system, he decided to view his next mission. Mission: how can you protect your technology if your kingdom defenses are so weak? Use your newly acquired rewards to create and test warfare cannons for the protection of your kingdom. Rewards: will your people keep living in thatched and mud houses? As the future kingdom for technological advancement, it's very humiliating. Hence, Host will receive all knowledge on cement manufacturing. Host will also receive 20 godly food recipes and 5 spice making recipes. In the future, if Host needs to create toasters, microwaves, ovens, and so on, your people should know why they need them in their everyday lives. Hence, they need to appreciate these various cooking appliances so as to create new ways of cooking and satisfy their palates. Lastly, Host will also receive 250 development points, DP, and 1,000 technology points, TP. Deadline: no specific time required. Landon looked at the mission and was completely baffled. The rewards for the new mission left him stunned. It's not that he had a problem with cooking, but when anyone is asked about technology, they would think about AI systems, laptops, cars, and so on. No one would ever mention anything about cooking. But now that he thought about it, if he could come up with different spices and dishes, people would want to eat them every day. Hence, they would readily appreciate cooking appliances like frying pans, ovens, grills, and so on. So in a sense, it was still a technological improvement in this era. After all, people want things that make their lives better and easier. Making them learn how to cook these godly recipes with their crude cooking methods will make their palates satisfied. But once things like frying pans, microwaves, toasters, ovens, and so on come out, they'll see how crude their cooking methods were and understand the importance of technology. They'll see how using these appliances can save time, cook efficiently, and open new doors in the cooking industry. More importantly, those appliances would be available to all, not just royalty or large households. Peasants would be accessible to them, and sooner or later, they'll see these appliances as essential needs for everyday living. For a moment, Landon thought this system was actually trying to brainwash people. I mean, he loved technology and all, and he saw its importance, but why couldn't he create these cooking equipments first before introducing these godly dishes? The system wanted these people to crave for the dishes. The more they craved, the more they'd try cooking them over and over again. By doing so, they would spend lengthy amounts of time cooking a single dish. And when Landon makes cooking appliances that reduce the amount of time used in cooking, they'd be hooked on them for good. The system just wanted people to practically worship technology. At this point, Landon wouldn't be surprised if in the future, a technology church popped up as a religion. In fact, Landon observed that the people didn't really know about deep frying methods. They knew about frying food, but these fried dishes were only served in the palace and top-class restaurants or large households. Even the way they fried was terrible. It was like they were so afraid to fry anything else other than rice, eggs, and meat. Landon thought this era was somewhat equivalent to the 10th century medieval times back on Earth. He just couldn't understand why they couldn't even fry vegetables or something else. What baffled Landon was that fish was often boiled, baked, or roasted, but never fried. I mean, if you could fry meat, why couldn't you fry fish? What kind of logic was that? But he knew that he also couldn't entirely blame them too. After all, frying only became popular 60 years ago in the Empire. Landon's late grandfather, who he never met, had gone on a sea voyage to one of the empires in Pino called Terry Cay. He had tasted the fried meat there and instantly fell in love with the taste. He later sent a group of chefs to learn about frying from them. These chefs returned after 6 months and taught the different chefs in the capital of Arcadina. As time went by, these practices spread out to other chefs, but majority of chefs never experimented beyond what they learned. Landon guessed that the few popular chefs who did experiment failed when trying to fry vegetables, fish, and other foods. So they concluded that these foods couldn't be fried. They probably fried them using the amount of time needed to fry meat as a basis. For sure, the results were catastrophic. The foods were burnt to a crisp. The more he thought about it, the more he changed his mind. It's not that they didn't understand logic. It was just that they were ignorant. After all, seeing is believing. Back on Earth, people believed that the world was flat until someone proved them wrong. They also believed that someone with a dying heart couldn't be saved until some performed the first heart transplant in the world. If someone told Landon they could breathe in space, he would tell them to prove it first before he believed in them. Humans believe what they see. So when those chefs failed in experimenting with frying, they only said what they saw and believed. After all, back on Earth, it was only until the 13th century before people knew other foods could be fried. And only until the 16th century before people knew manure was good for crops. Unless you provide substantial evidence to support your claim, no one would believe you. Coming back to cooking, most people just roasted or boiled food over the fire for long periods of time. Then they would add various leaves, honey, and salt as spices. Landon thought grills were an absolute must as well as fridges. Some people didn't even use salt because salt was very expensive. Some of the cooking appliances in this era are not practical for everyday use. Their pots didn't have handles and were unnecessarily large. They looked like a witch's cauldron in those fantasy movies. The only thing that Landon found okay was their baking methods. They could make sweet, delicious pastries, pies, and of various types of puddings. Their ovens were used in baking and also used in making mud bricks. They were really expensive for peasants to use. So he already decided to make ovens that ran on electricity like those found on Earth. Most ovens only existed in large households and bakeries. In larger and flourishing cities, it was common for a community to have a shared ownership of an oven to ensure that bread making was accessible to everyone rather than private individuals. I have a long way to go. I see why I need those dishes. I wonder when I'll be able to eat pizza again. Landon thought, as signed helplessly when he thought about the backwardness of this era. Just thinking about how much work he had to do in the future gave him a minor headache. Why couldn't he transmigrate into an era which was close to the 18th century on Earth or more? Truly tragic. Landon decided to sleep early, as he had to give the Knights their first military test in the morning. In the early hours of the morning, 4 a.m., a large group of Knights could be seen making their way towards the lower regions in lines of 3. Looking at them, Landon couldn't believe how much they had improved by. Their muscles were bulging, and they had much more discipline and strength compared to their previous appearances. They all had upright postures, sturdy physiques, and unfaltering determination. Little Momo was the only one that didn't have that robust physique, After all, he was still a child. Nonetheless, he had all the other qualities instilled into him, so he wasn't very lacking as a soldier. He seemed more mature and had looked very confident for his age. As the group moved, their footsteps were so light that one would think they were assassins and not knights. Landon had taught them the importance of camouflage and giving the enemy the element of surprise. In this era, knights fought proudly and with honor, liked to show off their flashy moves to prove that they were powerful. They thought sneaking around was an act of cowardice and showed lack of strength. But Landon disagreed. In war, finding the easiest and safest way to eliminate your opponent while protecting your comrades showed true strength. The less casualties produced, the better. In fact, Landon had taught them how to set up booby traps and come up with different war strategies. He especially taught them how to knock someone out by hitting all their pressure points, especially the back of their necks. Since swords weren't allowed in the first phase of the exams, they would have to use their hands and their brains. Hence, he taught them basic martial arts and self-defense tactics. 2 weeks prior to the military exam, Landon had located 3 mini hills that were far away from the farmlands or any of the estates. Each hill was surrounded by trees and a lot of bushes, making it perfect for camouflage and traps. Some parts even had sand pits, while others had little streams that obviously led to the sea. It was perfect. Landon had given each team a mini hill as their base and told them to build their own base wooden sheds and booby traps for the upcoming exam. Although he didn't tell them the nature of the exam, they immediately understood that each team would face each other in the upcoming exams. So they started preparing for the exam. Once they arrived, Landon looked at the men lined up in rows of 3 and was very pleased. They now looked and acted like the soldiers back on Earth. There will be 2 phases for the exam. Phase 1 will include strategy and enemy infiltration, while Phase 2 will be on swordsmanship. Today we will only focus on Phase 1, while tomorrow will be on Phase 2-inch. Landon said. While he spoke, Commander Lucius and Butler Nathan placed boxes in front of each team. The boxes in front of you contain each team's headband, ropes, and flags. Josh's team will wear the red headbands. Mark's team would use the yellow headbands, and Gary's team will use the purple headbands. There are also 50 pieces of rope in each box for tying up prisoners. Each team should have 5 flags that have the same color as the team's headbands. Your headbands can be worn on your heads, wrists, arms, and even on your legs. Wear them anywhere you'd like. Now, put on your headbands. The team captains quickly carried their boxes and distributed each headpiece swiftly. Landon was impressed. The men didn't break up their lines and just waited for their team captains to give them the headbands. Some put them on their legs, others on their waist, arms, and so on. No one put them on their heads. Landon smirked. They were smart. These so-called headbands were just pieces of clothes cut from very old peasant clothes. Once Landon saw that they were done, he continued. Tonight, each team should come up with its offensive and defensive sides. Your goal is to gather at least 1 enemy flag or at least 50 enemy headbands. I will not give any advice or aid on how to hide your flags or engage in this battle. Do you all understand? They hurriedly gave a military salute and yelled out, SIR. Yes, SIR. Good. During the battle, Commander Lucius and myself will be moving between each camps to observe you all from the shadows. And at the end of the exam, everyone will all be graded. Landon replied. Once they heard what Landon said, they were filled with more determination to prove themselves. Here are the rules for the battle. The use of weapons like swords or blades is prohibited. Only martial arts or self-defense tactics can be used to disarm your enemies. Finally, knocking your enemies out is also not allowed. They all listened carefully as they didn't want to miss any major details. Those who lose their headbands will be considered as dead. If you're captured and your headband is taken from you, you are considered dead. If you lose your headband by accident, you will also be considered as dead. Once dead, you cannot and should not continue with the battle. Aiding your team after pronounced dead is a serious crime in today's battle. He looked at them and released a cold aura which made their spine shiver. Anyone who disobeys these rules will get a month worth of intense punishment at the end of the exam. You will also not rank up as a soldier for the time being. Hence, do not disobey orders. After all, Dead men tell no tales and should not affect the battle in any way. Everyone felt as if the headbands given to them had the same worth as a mountain of gold. They secretly asked themselves whether the position they placed the headbands were secure enough and well hidden from their enemies. One more thing, the duration of the exam is 2 hours. Once the time is up, even if you haven't succeeded in the exam, you are all to assemble back here immediately. Failure to do so will also result in a weak punishment for all soldiers, irrespective of what team you belong to. They were shocked. So if someone in another team was late, then they too would get punished? In fact, Landon did this to ensure teamwork with his knights. He wanted all of them to be their brother's keepers, or so to speak. Good luck, men. You exam starts now? Landon said. Josh's camp. Josh looked at his men, whom he had successfully divided into groups of 5. The first group had 12 men, the second had 36 men, the third had 20 men, the fourth had 16, and the fifth had 15 men. Group 1 will constantly scout the perimeter of the base. There should be at least 3 people stationed at each checkpoint. If an enemy approaches, one person should rush back to alert us, another trails them quietly from the shadows, and the last should always stay on guard at the checkpoint in case other enemies approach again. Remember, unless necessary, do not attack them. Just observe quietly. Do you understand? Yes, Captain, they replied swiftly. When they were building traps, they also built hidden bases and covered them with mud, leaves, grass, and sticks so they could spy on their enemies without being seen. Group 2 will focus on infiltrating our enemy camps. Since you are 36 in number, 18 men will infiltrate Gary's camp, while the other half will infiltrate Mark's camp. From the 18, divide yourselves into 6 groups and infiltrate the camp from all entrances. Once your position has been compromised, escape and return to the base carefully. Yes, Captain, Group 2 replied. Group 3 will be stationed at all trap positions. Each trap should have 3 people guarding them. Once the enemy falls into the trap, secure their headbands and take them as prisoners or free them. Once the prisoners and their headbands are secured, one person should rush back, give little Momo the headbands. Once given, return to your positions by the traps. The other 2 should redo the traps and wait for another enemy encounter. Yes, Captain, Group 3 replied. Group 4 will be in charge of guarding 4 of the flags. I will keep 1 with me, of course. Spread yourselves around the hill in groups of 4 and protect the flags. Remember, choose a location that wouldn't give off your position to the enemy easily. Yes, Captain, they also replied. Finally, Group 5 will have 3 subgroups in charge of guarding our main base, protecting Little Momo, and protecting myself. Remember, Little Momo is the one who will have all the enemy headbands in his position. If another enemy steals all the headbands we worked hard to get, then we will lose this battle. Although I'm confident in my own skills as a knight captain, we must plan for the unexpected. Hence, since I have 1 flag as well, it is your duty and responsibility to protect me. Yes, Captain, Group 4 replied. Outskirts of Gary's Hill, a group of soldiers hid quietly in the bushes and trees, carefully waiting for their prey to move closer towards them. They had planned to ambush their enemies. They had painted their faces, necks, and hands with mud, and had stuck tree branches, leaves, and grass all over their hair. It was clear that they had tried as much as possible to remove any and all shine from their skins. It would be extremely hard for anyone to spot them with this kind of army camouflage. Barry Jacks was one of these soldiers. He stood at the back of a tree, waiting for his prey to get closer, while holding trees' branches as part of his camouflage. There were a total of 4 people walking into their territory. Once the enemy was close enough, Barry and his team moved out quickly. Barry arrived behind one of the men and sharply pressed his fingers behind the man's ear into the pit between the jaw and the neck. This region was the parotid lymph node. He then gripped the ear in a fist and dashed the lobe from bottom up, twisting the ear up towards himself. The soldier whose ear was gripped felt his entire body go numb, and he subconsciously fell on his knees in defeat. Barry swiftly took off the soldier's headband and used his rope to tie the soldier as a prisoner. By the time his team was done, they escorted the captured soldiers to the outskirts of their base. They figured that since the soldiers were now dead, they would not be able to interfere with their camp anymore. Hence, they freed them and returned to their main base. As Landon watched through the monitors of the system, he took a mental note of Barry and his team, especially Barry. When the enemies came, he was the one who signaled the men to attack. If Barry had been a few seconds late, this ambush would have been a complete failure. Even Barry's quickness and decisiveness when dealing with his enemies was remarkable. The others in his team were good, but Barry was a natural. It was like he was born to be an assassin. Landon was pleased. Josh's camp. As Trey and his team left Mark's camp, they decided to first observe the perimeter of Josh's camp. They knew that, like all their Captain Mark, Captain Josh would also station people around the perimeter. The team looked at the trees carefully, but didn't see anyone on them, so they ruled out the possibility of Josh's men using tree huts like they did. In their own camp, Mark had made camouflage tree huts with mud, grass, and leaves on top of the trees. Just as they were about to move into Josh's territory, Terry spotted a heap of dried grass, leaves, and twigs that looked suspicious. The only reason Terry noticed it was because the grass seemed to be growing in the wrong direction compared to the surrounding grass. "What do you guys think of that heap over there?" Terry asked. It looks normal to me. Do you think there's something weird about it?" One of his teammates asked. "I think their knights are hiding in there." Terry responded while nodded. The other three were shocked. "The heap is really small. How can anyone be under there? Only a child could fit there, all right." Terry wasn't sure if his hunch was right, but it wouldn't hurt to double-check. "I'm guessing that they dug out holes there, jumped into them, and placed the grass and leaves on their heads while waiting for enemies. Once the enemies passed through the checkpoint, they would get out of those holes and report what they saw to Captain Josh. I have a plan." Terry and his team walked in casually, pretending to not be aware of the hidden knights in hiding. Once they were out of view from the heap on the ground, they hid in the bushes and waited to confirm their speculations. As expected, after 3 minutes, 2 knights jumped up from the ground. One went towards the left, while the other towards their direction. Terry signaled for 2 of his men to capture the other knight, while the rest focused on the approaching knight. Once the knight passed their hiding spot, Terry quickly arrived behind the knight and covered the knight's mouth with his hand, while his teammate quickly weakened his pressure points and took off the knight's headband from his arm. "Now you are considered dead. Remember, dead men tell no tales. So once I take my hands off your mouth, you cannot speak or scream. Understand?" The soldier nodded understandably. After all, what could he do? He was just a corpse now. They decided to check if there was any other person in that hole. They couldn't ask the captured knight because he was already considered dead. Terry decided to go for a surprise attack by jumping into the hole and taking out his enemy. Once in the hole, the young knight was shocked for a while before trying to defend himself. They battled in the hole for 2 minutes before Terry found an opportunity to secure the knight's headband. It wasn't that the knight was weak or anything. In fact, from a spectator's point of view, they were evenly matched in strength. The only reason why Terry won was due to the fact that he had way experienced in combat and battle than his opponent. Just as he was done, his other teammates brought back the headband from that knight that went towards the left. With just 3 headbands, they decided to continue until they got at least 10 more. A while after they left, Lucius came out from his spot of hiding. He told the dead knights to go towards the meeting ground and wait there until the exams were done. "Terry, my boy, your biggest asset is your brain. This boy is already smart and observant enough to access his enemy's potentials. Combined with his fighting prowess, in the future, he will be a powerful force to behold." Lucius thought. Mark's territory. A group of knights were silently following their prey while waiting for an opportunity to seize their enemy's flag. At the start, they thought that these soldiers were looking for people to hunt down, so they decided to lay low for now. But after following for a while, they noticed that their soldiers were not hunting, but hiding. This only meant that they had their camp's flag with them and didn't want to get caught. They were 4 enemy knights in total, but his team only had 3 members. They needed to act real quick to accomplish their task. Although it was risky, they were all willing to take that risk. One of these soldiers was Billy Vane, who was a knight under Captain Josh. He was the shy knight that gave Landon a smart suggestion during the city's inspection a while ago. But now, he was beaming with confidence. The enemies located a good hideout and decided to stay there for a while. Just as they were about to lay low, Billy's team appeared swiftly. Billy quickly numbed the first night by hitting his pressure points and took his headband. By the time he was done, another enemy came towards him. This one was strong. He began seriously fighting while observing his other two teammates from the corners of his eyes. His teammates had been a little slower in attacking their enemies. Hence, the element of surprise didn't go too well as they planned. Everyone was fighting seriously, trying to snatch each other's headbands. Billy had been thinking of how to get close enough to snatch his opponent's headband tied around his neck, when all of a sudden he realized that his teammate was about to be killed, headband taken off. He hurriedly kicked his opponent and successfully helped his teammate in the nick of time. His teammate used the opportunity to quickly take the headband. While Billy returned to fighting the knight he fiercely kicked. His teammate, who he had just helped, decided to assist the other teammate who also had trouble finishing the job. Billy fought for 7 minutes before successfully taking the headband from his opponent. He looked at his opponent and said, "You're good. I'm honored to have fought with you this time. I was just lucky to have won this time around. Thank you," Billy said while smiling. His opponent smiled back, but didn't say anything. After all, he was dead. What could dead man say? Once Billy and his team were done, they decided to quickly leave and head back to Josh's camp. Walking around with the enemy's flag was also too risky. As Landon observed more, he was shocked at Billy's transformation. Wasn't this the boy who had once looked like a cute K-pop star? Now his body looked like a sexy gongyu. Even his shy attitude and aura had been replaced by a serious and manly one. Landon really admired Billy's courage and fearless attitude. Although it was risky for their 3-man group to go against 4 enemies, they still took the chance. And when Barry saw the helpless situation his teammates were in, he didn't even hesitate to help them out. He was loyal and hardworking. Such a man could even die for his comrades in war. Although it was admirable, Landon didn't like them taking such risks as sacrificing their lives easily. What he wanted was for them to think various ways of rescuing their teammates and themselves safely. If the chances of a soldier making it back was less than 70%, Landon didn't want them to take on the jobs. Like he said, it was admirable, but too risky. Take, for example, if the Empire was to send thousands of troops right now to kill him, his people and retainers, he would try to find a way to secure everyone's safety by letting them escape. What was the point of fighting to the death with no power? Landon firmly believed in the live today to fight tomorrow philosophy. Just because one couldn't fight his enemies today didn't mean they would never crush them in the future. As for Landon L., the only thing he needed was time, and the systems helped to avert all crises coming his way. And when he was ready, he would find out who poisoned this daddy here. Oh yes, he was still pissed about the poisoning that took place when he first got here. Although he was cured, he was still a very petty person. If you were good to him, he would give you the world. But if you looked for his trouble, he would kill you 1,000,000 times over. He was a very, very, very petty man, and he was aware of that flaw. Before everyone knew it, time was up. They had been constantly battling, observing, and capturing their opponents for 2 whole hours. Everyone assembled in straight rows of 3 behind their captains. No one was late. Landon had put 2 bags in front of each team captain. One bag was used to collect all headbands from their surviving team members, while the other was used to collect enemy headbands and flags. Once collected, Landon counted everything in front of everyone so that they could know how they did as a team so far. Josh's team had collected 2 flags and 19 headbands. Mark's team had 1 flag and 25 headbands, while Gary's team also had 1 flag and 27 headbands. Their results were overall the same in Landon's eyes. Although Josh had the lowest amount of headbands, he had obtained 2 flags, while Gary and Mark were similar in their scores too. Everyone had successfully passed as a team in this exam. Once the soldiers heard their results, they were so happy that they almost cried. One had to know that this was the hardest exam in their lives. Most of them lacked battle experience and weren't all that familiar with battle tactics, but they persevered through, and all their hard work bore fruit. They themselves had seen the changes in the bodies and their ways of thinking. They regarded each other as family, and for the first time had a deep sense of brotherhood. Now that they thought about it, Most knights in the capital were very selfish, only thinking about how to get more power and wealth. If you were not strong, you would be trampled on and even ridiculed there. But here in Baymard, they had a new understanding of how life should be. The strong should always protect and provide for the weak. No matter how poor people are, it was not enough reason for anyone to treat them like trash. Now it was just 6:30 a.m., which was too early for their normal training sessions to end, so they knew that there was more to the exam than this. Since we time on our hands, we will move on to the next stage for today's exam. You can what you just did as Phase 1 Part A, while this one will be Phase 1 Part B. Landon said, I need you all to form groups of 6, which will include 2 knights from each team. The last test showed how well you performed in your captain's team, but now I need you to work well with other knights under other captains. Remember, we are all people of Baymard. No one is more superior or inferior to the other. There is always room for improvement, so keep working hard. Landon continued. The men thought what Landon said was right. They were all for Baymard. It didn't matter which captain they were under, provided they did their best for Baymard. Now, form groups of 6 as required. Of course, the captains will be grouped together separately from you all. They hurriedly formed their groups and waited for further instructions. Over the last weeks, I have been training you all on how to use simple tools with your own bare strength, and then using them to climb hills and cliffs. By using your bare hands, you all have improved your physical stamina, flexibility, mental strength, muscle coordination, muscle strength, and a sense of judgment for adaptability. Some of you have even conquered your fear of heights and death. Landon looked at his men who were beaming with pride and confidence, and felt a sense of accomplishment within him. A few days ago, he had paid some villagers had to assist him in building the exam set. For this test, Landon had set it up almost like the military drill sessions back on Earth. You all follow me, and I will show you where your next exam will be held. Landon said. Once they arrived, seeing what was in front of them, they were confused about how the test would progress. For each team, Landon had put 5 stacks of wood separated by a very short distance. Only 6 people could jump over 1 stack at a time. He had used trees for this test after all. The soldiers were all expected to jump over these wood stacks without touching them. The next drill was the tire drill exercise back on Earth. Soldiers would hop in several car tires while trying not to fall. Since there were no tires in this era, he made circular molds with mud, leaves, grass, and twigs. Oldiers were required to hop through 20 tires without falling before going to the next exercise. He later built a 5-row wooden jumping bar over some muddy water, which had dried out now, but it made the ground look mushy for each team. The goal was for the soldiers to cross the muddy water by using the hanging wooden bars he built without touching the ground, followed by a large wall made of net, hanging over the side of a 10 feet, sturdy and old tree. The men would run up to the wall, climb and slide down the tree like a pole, and move on. They would later crawl under several nets that were pinned very close to the ground. And finally, they would have to rock climb the cliff at the side of the mountain to get to the top. Once on the cliff top, they would meet Commander Lucius, get a block of wood from him, and rush back to present it back to Landon. Mission complete. For your test, Baymard is at war, and the only way to save it from extinction is to retrieve something very important from Commander Lucius and bring it back to this king. Your task is to pass through all the obstacles, get the item, and successfully retrieve it without damaging it. Landon looked at his excited men and continued. But there's something very important to note. When doing rock climbing, each team will only be given 8 ropes to use. You're to secure your rope as well as your teammates before proceeding to climb. Commander Lucius will not give you the item if you are 1 teammate short. If 1 person isn't there, you all fail. Everyone finally understood that they seriously needed to work well as a team. Also, going to Commander Lucius and coming back should only take 15 minutes. Once the time is up, your exam will end. They were all worried now whether they could do it or not. As Landon looked at their worried faces, he decided to boost their confidence by letting their captains demonstrate it for them. In fact, once Landon finished building all the obstacle courses, he had showed Lysias and the captains how to perform the drills. At first they were slow, but now they were pros. After all, they didn't want to let the soldiers see them fail as captains, so they trained extra hard for this. As you can see, there are 5 sets of obstacle courses in front of you. There are 3 net walls available for all to use. Remember that. The only other thing you all share is the cliff. So 5 teams will perform at once. Now I'll let you see how it's done by letting your captains work as a team for this test. As the men watched their captains work together very fast, they were amazed and looked at them with worshiping gazes. The speed at which their captains climbed the cliffs together amazed them, as they knew that they themselves couldn't be that fast as of now. But nonetheless, they were now confident that the test was within their capabilities. When their captains returned, everyone clapped and said various honest, heartfelt praises. Now, the first 5 teams step up and begin. The exam starts. Joseph Fig was very anxious and nervous as he watched the exam progress from the sides. He observed that some knights had their legs tangled up on the rope wall, while others couldn't jump swiftly over the stacks that were present. Most people fell when they had to jump through the circular stacks of dry, muddy leaves, and few people were slow when doing rock climbing. Their king had taught them how to make decisive decisions on where to place their hands when rock climbing. He also noted that for some people, by the time they reached the cliff top, Landon would say their time was up. Others had collected the item from Lucius, and on their way back to Landon, their time was up as well. Some people also damaged the item on their way back by dropping it in the mud or letting it fall from the top to the bottom of the cliff. This was also a fail to their king. Their king said the only thing he would allow to damage the item was blood. Carelessness with important items, or even state documents, could lead to exposure and worsen your position with your opponent. If you get the item, one must secure it before proceeding to return. But surprisingly, what Joseph was worried about was cliff climbing. When he climbed before, he was confident because he was alone on his rope. But now, other people might depend on him to climb up the cliff. Their security and lives were somewhat in his hands. Their king had told them that in a military war campaign, when a rock wall, cliff, or mountainside was visible anytime, many people would choose to go around it, Joseph included. This was the first time he had ever heard of a need to know how to scale hills, cliffs, or mountains. No one had thought of this idea, but Joseph could see the wisdom in it. No enemy would imagine that someone would willingly climb a cliff just to attack them, so they would leave that edge unsupervised, giving room for them to invasion to occur. And if you were not fast enough when climbing a cliff, the enemy might discover you and throw boulders down on you, instantly crushing you. As their king always says, you need to be swift as an assassin in war. Joseph decided to do his best and toughen up for the glory of Baymard and his majesty, as well as improve himself. Even if he didn't complete the exam, he needed to be confident in carrying his teammates through. And Joseph was right. Although time was important in this drill, Landon's primary objective was on teamwork. He needed each knight to feel the responsibility given to them in a team. They couldn't act selfishly, and they needed to make wise decisions that benefit the entire team as a whole. When Joseph and his team ran towards the bottom of the cliff, Joseph took one end of a rope, knotted it around his waist, and passed the other end of the rope to his next teammate. This was, of course, for safety measures. Joseph realized that he was the safety climber, lead climber, of the group, while the others were supporting climbers behind him. Joseph took another rope, tied it around his legs, but as a harness, and knotted both ends of the rope with the other team rope around his waist. His teammates did the same thing as well. Of course, His Highness had said that each person must always have a dagger when climbing up a cliff or rock wall. One end of new rope should always be tied to the dagger and the other end to the climber's waist rope. Once they reach a dangerous height, the lead climber was to pierce the soil and rock cracks deeply as support and climb up the cliff. In this way, if all of them slip, the rope attached to the deeply pierced knife will save them. Joseph looked the tall cliff in front of him and decided to start climbing it. He looked at a vine in front of him and hesitated whether or not it would be wise to grab it now. When he did, nothing happened, and he immediately became happy in knowing that he made the right choice for his team. As they progressed up the hill, suddenly, Joseph felt a tug on his team waist rope and looked down. He immediately saw one of his teammates dangling helplessly from the team rope. His teammate had slipped. Joseph thought fast. Use your dagger to stabilize yourself by stabbing it into soil and climbing back to your position. We will wait for you, don't worry, Joseph said with a smile. The knight smiled bitterly with his face filled with guilt. He looked like he was about to give up. It doesn't matter if we don't make in 15 minutes. What matters is that we work hard together and better our skills. You are the best at the other obstacle activities. So what if you're slow in this one now? With His Highness' help, we will become professionals in no time. Persevere and don't give up easily. Joseph encouraged while smiling with confidence. Yeah, he's right. Cheer up. I myself almost slipped there too. We are all learning, are we not? No one is as good as our captains now, so don't worry. Push on, said another knight smilingly. The knight looked at Joseph and the rest, and smiled more confidently, as if he just had an enlightenment. Thank you all, he replied. As Landon, the captains, and Lucius heard them, they all smiled and nodded, as if acknowledging what was said. It was the main point they were trying to drive home today. Likewise, as the other knights heard this, they also had a stroke of epiphany, and finally you understood what the real goal was for this exercise. Once Joseph and his team reached the top of the cliff, their time was up. Although they had failed in the aspect of time, they had passed regarding their teamwork. They held their heads high and didn't feel down at all. In their minds, they were thinking of how to improve themselves more over time. In fact, all the knights didn't get discouraged, but aspired to improve and become as tough as their captains. Once they were all done with the test, everyone went on with their daily duties excitedly in anticipation for the last exam. Tomorrow was the last day for this hellish exam. Would it be a normal sword fighting competition or something else? This question made them ponder deeply the entire day. Iggy's snore, and finally everyone went to bed with anxious smiles on their faces and a sense of accomplishment in their hearts. They felt strong and confident. The next day, the soldiers had gathered at the training courtyard in the castle. Today was the last day for the exams. Those who were proclaimed dead yesterday felt like they had to do exceptionally well in today's test. They were so anxious such that they were literally shaking unknowingly. For them, they had let their commander, captains, teammates, and His Highness down. This alone was enough for them to want to prove their worths. Landon looked at his men and smiled. Today, Commander Lucius and I will test your swordsmanship skills. We will be looking at your reaction time, flexibility, prowess, and fighting tactics. Each person will be given 4 sandbags weighing 4 kilograms each and a 15-kilogram sandbag to carry on your backs. You are to fight either Commander Lucius or myself for 5 minutes while wearing these weights. 2 matches going on at the same time. Commander Lucius will fight in one match, while I, the other. Landon knew that Lucius could last for 2 hours straight without even taking a break when wielding his sword. Lucius was a war veteran. To get to his position, one needed to have slaughtered a lot of enemies in the battlefield. In some war cases, Lucius had to fight for 4 hours straight before the war ended. Others lasted for 2 hours, while some for 3 hours. Breathing exercises were very popular for knights. In the battlefield, one needed a lot of stamina and momentum to push on. Landon knew that at the end of every match, it would take 1 minute for the knight to leave and a new one to come on stage. For veteran knights, that 1 minute was perfect for breathing exercises and gathering momentum for the next opponent. Although Landon knew this, he still didn't want to burden Lucius that much. As for Landon, he knew that he couldn't last for more than an hour without getting tired. So he asked the system for help. System, do you have energy boosters that I could use? Answering host, this system has everything, even instant ramen noodles. Therefore, system will have energy boosters. 1 shot of energy from the system can last for 1 hour only and costs either 3 development points, 5 technology points, or 1 bonus points. This energy shot revitalizes 1 energy level, bringing one's body to maximum energy conditions. All traces of fatigue and pain will disappear from the user. Does host want to use his development points toward this? The system asked. System, can I use this shot on anyone other than myself? Yes, you can, host. Good. After every hour, give Captain Lucius and myself energy shots. So for 4 hours, we will need 3 shots each. In total, 6 shots will be used. Right, system? That is correct, host. In total, the host will use up 18 development points for the hourly energy shots. Landon nodded and was pleased. He also decided to get some for Lucius, because although Lucius could really last long, he wanted Lucius to fight the young knights in his best conditions. Others should not fight Lucius when he was tired, as that will also not be fair to the knights who fought him in his best condition previously. The reason for the weights is to see how the men could fight in different scenarios. When facing an enemy, you might have to fight when carrying heavy items or even rescued civilians on your back. What if you were carrying an unconscious princess, and the minute you put her down, someone sneaks attacks you and kill her? Besides, you might need to escape while fighting and carrying heavy items in your hand or a person on your back. Adaptability is key. It is also important to note that your enemy might not carry any extra items or persons when attacking you, so they would be free and weightless compared to you. Hence, Landon insisted that they fought with these weights on. Landon realized that most of the young knights couldn't fight well when carrying weights on their backs and legs. Surprisingly, the weights on their hands didn't disturb them all that much from wielding their swords. The problem was that they didn't know how to balance their center of gravity when fighting with these weights. So most of the time, they would fall down, trip, or even accidentally drop their swords. They were struggling to adjust themselves, but in battle, the enemy will not give you the time to adjust. Looking at his men, Landon decided that he would start training them regularly with weights. After 1 hour of battling, Lucius was surprised that he didn't feel tired at all. He assumed it was because of the breathing exercises he did during the battles. Lucius looked at Landon and was deeply impressed. He had assumed that the young lord would get weak after an hour of multiple intense battles. He decided to see how long Landon could last before opting for a break from the exams. 2 hours went by, and even 3 hours had gone by, yet Landon didn't even break a sweat. Although Lucius found it oddly strange that he wasn't tired, he now regarded Landon as a monster for wielding a sword so long. In fact, Lucius wasn't the only one thinking that. The young knights all thought Landon was not human. Lucius they understood, but Landon, who had never gone to war before, could last this long? They were all impressed by their king. Once the exam was over, Landon informed the knights that they would get their results and rewards tomorrow morning before their regular training sessions. After having breakfast, Landon made up his mind to check on the farmlands and mines today. As he was walking out of the upper region with Terry, one of Tim's apprentices, rushing over. "Good day, Your Highness. All the slate boards and chalkboards requested have been successful made," Paul said while bowing his head at Landon. "Raise your head, Paul. This is wonderful news. Let's go see your master first, shall we?" "Yes, Your Highness." "Good day, Your Highness. All your orders have been completed and are ready to go. If I must say, Your Highness, these chalkboards and that strange white stone you call chalk are simply genius," Tim said while gazing at Landon with eyes filled with worship and adoration. Landon chuckled. "Don't get too excited, Tim. In the future, we will create more marvelous products in Baymard. After all, although the idea was mine, you and your apprentices did all the actual work. So you all deserve most of the credit." No, Your Highness. A true man doesn't take credit for what he did not do," Tim said while shaking his head. Landon could only look at him helplessly. In fact, as time went by, Tim had come to know of all the brilliant ideas and things His Highness had done in Baymard, from making the land bear food, to producing chalk and so on. How could a 15-year-old have such profound knowledge? In his eyes, Landon had already become a wise sage who knew how to solve every problem in the world. "Tim, are you and your apprentices literate?" Landon asked. "Yes, Your Highness. I taught them how to read, write, and do math," Tom answered confusedly. "In the future, I would like you to teach more people about carpentry and construction. Would you be able to do that?" Tim thought for a while and finally replied, "I would, Your Highness, but my workshop is too small to accommodate a lot of people here," Tim said while looking around his messy workshop. "Don't worry about that for now. Tim, I want to open a school for everyone in Baymard. Once people know how to read and write, I want you to pick 2 of your apprentices or yourself to teach them about carpentry and construction later on. You don't need to worry about anything else. I will give you an entire estate in the lower region consisting of 18 buildings for your new workshops. Tim was shocked. Isn't an entire estate too big for just a tiny workshop? Was His Highness planning? Landon looked at Tim and instantly knew what he was worried about. These buildings will be able to allow over 2,000 people to work in them at once. I will put you in charge of these buildings and all construction projects in Baymard. Although we don't have a lot of people now, very soon this place will be filled with people. Tim finally understood where Landon was driving at. Plus, in the future, I will also teach you new never-before-seen techniques for welding, constructing materials, or buildings and creation of new devices and equipments. You will be the first person in the entire empire to use these techniques. As for the new equipments, they will mostly be made from iron. Of course, you and all villagers under you will get paid for your services monthly. The more Tim heard, the more excited he became. Right now, he hardly had any customers who were in his workshop. His customers over the years were the barons and the city lord. They paid him a fair price for all his works, and he was content with the amount. The only reason he cared about the money was to feed his apprentices and himself, as well as help some villagers here and there. When he had excess money, he would drive a car to the next village, buy food, and share with some villagers of Baymard. But now, he had the chance to let the villagers earn some coins, while he would learn new skills and techniques in his profession. How could he not agree to His Highness' request? So once you understand the principles and methods that I teach you, I need you to also teach everyone coming later on into your workshops. Landon continued. Of course, Your Highness, Tim said happily. Landon knew that he couldn't request him to teach the principles of construction now, or Wiggins to teach the principles of mineral or extraction, or anyone for that matter. Right now, none of them knew anything about physics, chemistry, or even biology. They knew math, but not the earth type of math. They only knew how to add, subtract, and do basic division. The good thing was that they were all literate. Landon planned that while the villagers were learning how to read, write, and perform math, he would give each of the leaders books on all 4 subjects, allowing them to study them first and then later teach their workers in all work departments. Tim was happy, but also now extremely worried. But Your Highness, more importantly, how are we supposed to get enough iron for all these? Don't worry, after you install these chalkboard to the various classrooms in the upper estate, I'll take you to a place. Tim was still confused, but chose to believe Landon anyway. Tim took 3 apprentices, put all the boards in a cart, and followed Landon and Terry to one of the estates in the upper region. Once they arrived, they spent their time dismantling the fancy designs and paintings on each wall. After all, Landon thought classrooms should be free of all distractions, so the students could better concentrate on their studies. They attached the chalkboards to the walls in various rooms and used one room as a storage room for all slate boards. Landon decided to go to the lower regions so he could show Tim the iron ores and also collect chalk for the classrooms. On his way down, the system notified him for his reward. Ding! Congratulations, host, for creating chalkboard, blackboards, and chalk. You were rewarded 40 bonus points, BP, for the creation of the chalkboard and 10 BP for creating chalk. The system replied. System, show me my stats. Host name, Landon Barn. Age, 15. Status, King of Baymard. Level, beginner, still level 1. Current Satotian, healthy. Overall points, 82 DP and 50 BP. Asterisk note, DP is development points and BP is bonus points. Actually, Landon had forgotten about the fact that he could get points for creating chalkboards and chalk. His mind was very focused on starting his mission on cannon making and gunpowder. He needed to teach Chief Wiggins the alchemist how to make gunpowder for the cannons fast. Suddenly, the system gave him a new warning alert. Warning, warning. Host, a ship is sailing towards the sea coast of your land. Landon said his goodbyes to Tim and rescheduled with him for tomorrow. Landon then made a U-turn with Terry back to the upper region. Terry was confused as to why Landon looked so flustered. Immediately, as Landon stepped into Lucius' office, he said, Uncle Lucius, there's a ship coming towards the sea coastline of Baymard. Please gather 100 men and come with me towards the coast. Lucius jumped up from his chair, took his sword, and ran out. While they were running, Lucius asked, "How long do you estimate before they arrive?" 2 hours' time, Landon replied. Everything happened so fast, and Terry was still confused, but he decided to wholeheartedly trust Landon's analysis. He thought that when he and Landon made their way towards the lower region, Landon must have probably seen a tiny dot-like figure on the sea approaching Baymard. After all, one could see the seas from the central region clearly. 1 hour later, while they were gathering enough men, a soldier from the seaport ran up to them. "My king, a large ship is approaching the coastline. It is estimated that they would arrive in an hour's time," said the knight. "You did well, soldier. Thank you for your report. Go back and tell the rest of the soldiers stationed there that we will bring enough men for safety before the ship docks on the coast." As the soldier was about to leave, he turned around and realized that a lot of knights were already gathered in the courtyard with Landon. Did His Highness already know of the approaching ship? Or is there another training routine I'm not aware of? The young knight pondered. Just like that, 30 minutes more had passed by, and Landon started moving towards the sea coast with his men. Once at the seaside, Landon had the villagers go back for safety reasons and waited for this unexpected ship to dock. The first time Landon came out here during the inspection, he knew something fishy was going on. There was an already built ship dock here, and the most villagers had said that after 4 months, Landon's father, the king of Arcadina, who came to Baymard in the ship for visits. Apparently, the city lords and barons had lies to the poor villagers so as to stop them from being nosy. During the time when the ship docked, the city lord would always ban people from coming to the coastline or even going towards the lower regions. The city lord claimed that they would bother His Majesty and get killed if they showed up to any of these places. The villagers were so afraid to die that once the ship docked, they would hide in the central region and only hunt for food in the forest outside the city gates. At first, he didn't understand what the barons and city lords' plans were. But after visiting the mines in the lower region, he had finally completed the puzzled mystery. There was no way his father would take time out every 3 months to visit Baymard. He would rather believe that cows could fly than believe that story. The villagers had lived all their lives here and were simple people. What did they know about royal visits? Sigh, they were really scammed out by those nobles. It was clear that these were the merchants who traded with the city lord and barons. The emblem and flag on their ship shows that they're from the Empire of Corona. From Baymard's location, Corona was its closest neighboring empire compared to Terry. It made sense that these nobles would trade with people outside the Empire of Arcadina. That way his father would never know a thing. So Landon concluded that this ship must be a merchant ship. As the ship docked, a chubby 20-year-old boy surrounded by his own knights walked off the ship towards Landon's direction. He smiled as he opened his arms and loudly spoke. "I'll wear as Baron Sylvain and City Lord Augustus. Have they fallen Isle? I have just finished trading with some cities in the Empire of Jotun and decided to get my usual supply from here." As Landon looked at the boy, he observed that the boy was completely clueless about Baymard's current situation. This boy was a jolly guy, all right. In fact, Landon thought that he was the smaller, chubbier version of Santa Claus back on Earth, without the gray hairs and beards. Just looking at him would make anyone smile. As he spoke, one could tell that his smile was genuine and his cheeks would get turned rosy red. Such a cheerful guy, Landon thought. "Sorry, sir, but the city lord and barons have been stationed in other cities in the Empire. I am the new lord and new king of Baymard, King Landon," Landon said with a smile. Mr. Santa Claus was taken aback. Yes, Santa. In fact, Landon had already decided to call him that irrespective of what his real name was. Santa's eyes almost popped out and his mouth opened widely. Landon really thought that this guy didn't have any poker face at all. Why so surprised? "So you are King Barn's son, Landon? You're nothing like what the people describe you to be. I can tell a person's true nature by just observing them." I think you're a good fellow, bro. You give me good vibes," the man said while nodding. Santa walked around Landon in a circular manner while constantly nodding. Landon and his knights didn't know whether to cry or to laugh. Grinning face with sweat. "Sir, can't you see he's our king? Can you at least not circle him as you like? Can't you do it without making it look so obvious?" The knights thought. Yup, I was right. No poker face at all. But I like it, Landon said with a smile. I'll wear my manners. Santa said. Everyone rolled their eyes heavenwards. Face with rolling eyes, face with rolling eyes. Even his own knights did it too. My name is Benjamin Hamilton, for short. You can call me Ben or whatever you like. Since we are already friends, I'll call you younger bro. Hi. In fact, you all should call me elder bro or little bro. Hee, Santa said while acting shy like a blushing maiden. Since when did we become friends with you? Can you not be so shameless? Most of the knights thought. Since we are already friends, I'll call you Santa from now on. Right, Santa? Landon replied playfully. No, what kind of name is that? Little bro, are you making fun of your older bro here? HM, it's weird, all right, Santa said while holding his jaws and shaking his head. Face screaming in fear, weary face, sleepy face. Landon couldn't hold it any longer and burst out laughing hard. You said I can call you whatever I want. So are you going back on your words now? Besides, Santa means a cheerful person, asterisk, he lied, smirking face. I like you a lot. That's why I gave you the nickname. Really? I like you too, bro. Yay! Santa replied while holding Landon's hands and shaking them vigorously. One of the knights from Santa's side coughed and looked at Landon as if begging for him to forgive Santa for his actions. Landon smiled back at him as if reassuring him that it was okay. Little brother, let's talk business, Santa said as he held onto Landon's shoulders and walked towards the lower region. In conclusion, when it concerned Santa, Landon had just one philosophy to go by. If you can't beat him, join him. Little bro, I won't even lie to you. I came here to buy some mineral ores from you. Would that be possible, little bro? Please, Santa asked with pleading puppy dog eyes. Of course it would. Not only that, in the future I will be making new, unique, and interesting products that'll be only available in Baymard. Anyway, just tell me how many tons you need, and I'll provide them for you immediately. Santa's eyes lit up when he heard the words unique and interesting. He was a merchant after all. As they moved through the lower region, Landon purposely showed Santa the labs and chalk samples that he developed. As they moved through the lower region Santa was stunned. He actually made the land bear food. This guy, Santa thought with a smile on his face. One could see fields of wheat, beans, and all other foods covering up to farmlands. There were bananas and plantains growing on the sides, as well as apples, tomatoes, lettuces, cabbages, and spinach. All the times he came to Baymard, 97% of farms didn't even have a single crop growing in them. But now these farms were overflowing with rich crops. How could Santa not be shocked? Was this still the Baymard he knew of? And unlike the other nobles he met, Landon didn't disrupt the peace in the village just because he was passing through with a guest. Santa observed that as they passed through, everyone on the farms greeted them warmly, especially Landon. And there were no false pretenses in their gazes. He noticed that most people looked at Landon as if he were a god. This little brother of his even cracked jokes with the villagers and carried the little children who came to see their parents at work. The kids were all happy that they could touch or be carried by their king. He even did a little magic trick for them before they left. This is how nobles should act, Santa thought. In fact, Santa was a noble himself. He was the third son of Baron Hamilton of Corona. Since he couldn't inherit his father's title, he chose to be a merchant. Over the years, he built quite a name for himself and became known throughout Corona as the foolish noble merchant by many. They call him foolish because since he was young, he never liked following all those pretentious and fake no-bell rules. At an early age, he always liked doing things that regular people loved. Once, he disguised himself as a peasant and worked in a bakery for 3 months. On the 3rd month, his dad found out and gave him the beatings of his life. Because of his nature, he became a thorn in his dad's eyes. People would mock and laugh at the Baron, saying that he had a peasant's son, as if there was anything wrong with that. He later on bought a ship and successfully crossed the seas, bringing different things from different parts of the world into Corona. He became popular and the go-to man for all shop owners and nobles in Corona. But his dad was still constantly disappointed in him, as well as his 2 older brothers. For them, it was an honor for a noble to fight and go to war for his majesty. The only people who loved him dearly were his mom and his 3 sisters. They thought he was cute, funny, and very kind. He just didn't like pretending and doing senseless things. Why couldn't people talk to each other regularly without the extra rules attached? That's why he secretly admired Landon. He could tell that Landon wasn't one who was also hung up on the rules of etiquette. As they passed through, the villagers didn't even bother with Santa at all. Their gazes were on full focus towards His Highness Landon. Was this the weak and dumb bastard child of King Barn? In fact, Santa knew that he wasn't weak. The aura Landon gave out was that of a person who had experienced a lot of battles. When he learned that Landon would be creating items that have never been seen before, Santa was skeptical. After taking a tour in the laboratory and seeing this so-called chalk, Santa was pleasantly surprised. Although chalk seemed like a small matter, to Santa it really wasn't. It was genius. Do you know how many slate boards are thrown away per year in his empire because they get scratched or destroyed? Chalk was way better than slate pencils and way cheaper. Slate pencils are like sticks which are used to scratch the boards for educational purposes. Chalk was the best solution for this problem, and it was only found in Baymard. How could Santa not want any? Little brother, is it possible to buy these chalk sticks now? I need enough chalk for 10,000 people in one go. Not for now, Santa. These chalk sticks are barely enough for my people as it is. And we don't have enough man labor to produce such large amounts. But if you can give me 3,000 slaves, or people who are genuinely looking for work the next time you come, then I'll be able to produce a huge batch for you. How about that? That makes sense, little bro. Okay. At the end of each month, I will send one of my trusted aides to you with a ship containing 1,000 workers in them. I will do this every month, until you have 3,000 men from me. That's good. Speaking of which, how much will you pay per ton of ores? Landon asked. I usually pay 1,200 gold coins per ton, little bro. And I'll be leaving with 150 tons of these ores today. So, I'll get 180,000 gold coins today, not bad. Landon thought. All right, so how much does it cost to get slaves? Landon asked. In the slave markets, slaves are gotten by how beautiful or how strong they are. The average slave costs 1,600 copper coins per person, Santa said. So, for 3,000 people, I'll need 480 gold coins. Landon thought. Do you have any rare seeds on your ship? Of course I do, silly. When I used to come here, the nobles would buy bags of wheat, beans, and other foods for me. There would also be a few who buy the seeds of these foods, although they knew that the lands couldn't bear anything. I'm guessing they still wanted to try their luck. Santa said with a smile. Good. Once we are done with your order, I'll take a look at your seeds. As the day went by, Landon, Santa, and the knights loaded up all the ores onto Santa's ship, and Landon gave him 12 chalk sticks as a parting gift. Landon ended up using 300 gold coins to buy bags of dried apple seeds, pear seeds, watermelon seeds, peach seeds, grape seeds, orange seeds, pepper seeds, peanuts, rice, and bean seeds. He quickly looked for Lior and carefully explained how the fruit seeds are to be planted. The farmers who saw the seeds were curious about some of them. They had never heard of watermelons and peach fruits before. They were now curious as to how the fruits will look and taste. Plus, Landon was craving some himself, too. With 179,700 gold coins more in Baymard's pocket, Landon was thrilled. But this gave rise to a new issue he had. Who would be in charge of government funds in the future? For now, he and his mom could do it, but later on, he needed to write laws, procedures, and violations codes for Baymard. All his trusted aides were knights, and he couldn't use his mom or Lucy either. The finance minister needed to be someone who was trustworthy and didn't show any characteristic traits of a greedy person. The chosen minister must also be well-learned, with a mindset that always focused on the improvement of Baymard. This would be difficult. Landon thought. The next day, on the training courtyard, Landon promoted some knights and rewarded them as lieutenants under their various knight captains. Mark, Josh, and Gary were promoted from captains to major generals for the army. Each major had 2 captains under them, and each captain had 4 lieutenants as well under them. Every knight was told about their strengths and weaknesses, as well as recommended personal workout routines for them to do in their free time. The knights who got promoted were extremely proud of their accomplishments and felt that all their hard work paid off. Those that didn't get promoted didn't feel jealous or envious of those that did. They knew how hard those captains and lieutenants trained to get those rankings. Barry Jacks, Terry, Billy Vane, Joseph Figg, and 2 others were promoted to captains under their various major generals. Once the training session was over, Landon took Tim to the lower region and showed him around the estate on the left side of the farms and the mines. Tim saw both mines and was completely shocked. One had iron ores while the other molybdenite. The other ores in the caves held no importance in his eyes, but to Landon they were extremely rare ores. Tim, I will put you in charge 350 men who will work in the estate. Out of the 19 buildings present in the estate, one will be used as a storage facility for keeping all ore stones extracted from mines. Each stone type will be stored separately in different rooms. No problem, Your Highness. This won't be an issue, Tim said while nodding. The second building in the estate will be used for glass production. We will need to collect a lot of sand from the sea for that. Glass? Tim was shocked. One had to know that glass was only produced accidentally by lightning in this era. Hence it was very rare and valuable, sort of like a collector's item. Tim had seen glass before, green-colored glass and blue-colored glass in the former Baron's estate before. In this era, sometimes when lightning struck the ground, tubes of glass would be formed. The electricity in a bolt of lightning can melt the sand, making it combine with other substances which later hardens into glass. Hence people thought that only the gods could make glass. Back on Earth, glass was first man-made in the late 15th century. And before that, people only waited on lightning to do some well. Obviously, Landon couldn't wait for the 10th century to move towards the 15th or 16th century for glass making be invented. He urgently needed laboratory test tubes so as to make gunpowder. He needed to isolate different compounds from the ores and accurately combine them to make effective products in the future. He needed to complete his mission as soon as possible, as well as ensure Baymard's safety for the time being. He hated the feeling of vulnerability towards his enemies. Anyone could gather a large army and kill him presently. Ever since he was cured from the wisp poison, he had felt something where someone wanted him seriously dead. He ruled out his father because, although his father hated him, his father also couldn't bother to kill him. His father was the sort of person that wouldn't waste his energy on an enemy that he considered to be weak. So that leaves his siblings in the mix. All of them were black-hearted and downright cruel. It had to be one of them. He needed to make the cannons fast, so as to protect Baymard, his mom, Lucy, his men, and himself as well. As Tim listened to Landon, he couldn't help but wonder if Landon was actually the reincarnation of a god. Either way, he was happy to be a part of the glass-making process. This was history in the making. Don't worry, Tim. I'll show you how it's done, Landon replied with a smile. Tim calmed his excited heart down and looked at His Highness with reverence. The third building will be used in producing what I call war cannons. I will also teach you how to create them. The fourth building will be used to make construction tools like pickaxes, construction rail cars, and other mining equipments. As for the rest of the 16 buildings, keep them unoccupied for now. Soon, other things will be created in them. Landon continued. Your Highness, how soon do you want to start? As soon as possible. Out of the 350 men, 100 will work on ore extraction, 100 will work on glass production, 100 on cannon making, and 50 will work in producing construct equipments. Don't worry, by the end of the month, Baymard will be expecting new workers, so by then you'll have more people in the production line. Tim nodded and listened attentively. You will be the overseer for all departments in the estate. I also need you to assign all 6 of your apprentices as supervisors for each sector and department. Landon said, the glass-making department will have 2 sectors, sand extraction from the sea and glass making itself. Likewise, ore extraction will also have 2 sectors, ores from the first mine and those from the second mine. Landon continued. Landon later told Tim the salary for all workers, supervisors, and overseers. He also ensured Tim that he would have cooks and guard around the estate for the workers. Since the paint company had used up all the mining pickaxes available, Landon gave Tim enough money to go to the next city and buy 1,000 more in preparation for the set of slaves coming from Corona. Tim had agreed to go to the neighboring town the next day and return before the end of the week, so Landon had to postpone his mission for now. Speaking of the slaves, Landon needed to make accommodations readily available for them once they came. In the central regions, most houses were concentrated far away from the front gate of the city in fear of enemy attacks. Landon thought that he could use those empty spaces to build mud-thatched houses for them. He would need to gather and pay a few more workers for the job, though. The next day, since Landon couldn't start the mission until Tim came back, he decided to open his school today. The adults could attend classes any time of the day, due to the fact that some of them worked at morning shifts while others worked at afternoon shifts. Landon forbade anyone, especially the miners, to work above 9 p.m. in Baymard. Mining while using lamps air candles was still too dangerous in Landon's opinion. The children, on the other hand, had to attend only morning classes. After training, he asked the knights to gather all the villagers around the town square in the central region. Even the miners and farmers had to attend, plus the alchemists and fishermen. Everybody. He looked at the large crowd and climbed up the podium in the city square in the central region. Citizens of Baymard, within this past month and a half, history has been made here in this glorious city. The farmlands have board food, the people are healthy, and the town is growing steadily. Some of you have had steady wages from working in the various jobs in Baymard and can now afford to feed your families. You all need to feel proud because this is the result of your hard work. Landon said. Everyone nodded and felt warm inside, especially those who had been working in factories and farmlands. As you all know, Baymard is no longer part of Arcadina. The Empire has rejected us because in their eyes we the trash of Arcadina. The Empire abandoned us and left us for dead. But do we need them? No, we don't. We will make our own empire and make them regret ever throwing us away. As they listened, their blood began to boil. 4 years now, they had been requesting food and assistance from their former king, Landon's father, King Barn. But what did he do? Absolutely nothing. He neglected them for years and left them to their hunger. The Empire laughed at Baymard, thinking that we would always remain weak and die from starvation. But haven't we proven them wrong? It is my dream to make Baymard a paradise on earth for you all. We will progress mentally, physically, and financially together. We will fight and trample on our enemies together. I promise to make the city a holy land to all who see it. Are you all with me? Are you all with me? Landon asked loudly. Yes, they yelled passionately. Good. In future, I will offer up more jobs to you all, allowing all of you to make as much money as you would like and live better lives than your current states. But for this to happen, I need my people to become literate. I will teach you all and allow you to further yourselves in the world. My people must not be looked down on by anyone in the Empire. I will make you all leaders of tomorrow and Baymard, the promised land for all. This is my promise to you. They were stunned. His Highness was willing to teach them. Their hearts were filled with joy and gratitude towards Landon. Their children would become literate and smart, like people in flourishing cities. They vowed that they were going to seriously learn and develop Baymard alongside with Landon. They also wanted to witness history in the making. Landon explained the schooling system to them and had everyone register for a session. He had Lucius and the 3 major generals write out their names on parchment papers. Lucius wrote down the names of all children, while the 3 generals registered the adults. Gary registered adults for morning classes, Josh for early afternoon classes, and Mark for late afternoon classes. Registering allowed Landon to know how many people would attend the classes daily. Just like that, the first day of class was set for tomorrow morning. He also told them about the slaves and refugees that would come at the end of the month and got 100 volunteered men and women who would aid in building houses for them. He discussed the pay and also promised to provide them with food and guards while they were working. He wrote down their names and told them that they would start the next day. And finally, he gathered 350 men and women in advance for the building and development of cannons. He also wrote down their names and told them to begin work Monday next week, since Tim would come on Friday. Off the bat, he decided to let most of the women work with making glass, as that did not involve strenuous digging for ores in the mines. Although women could do the job, men had more raw strength and were just faster than women. On Earth, women could work in a lot of jobs due to the progress of technology. There were machines that dug up the ground and carried raw materials for people. All one needed to do was to control these machines. But now, in this ancient and wayward era, there was no way he would allow women carry heavy stones and rocks all day. They get sick and damage their organs and bodies. Landon wasn't risking it, but he could allow them to be a part of putting sand in sacks and letting the men load them onto carts that would transport them to the glass-making factory. The women could also become alchemists or scientists, if you will. They could also weld and mold the cannons in a giant furnace, but he would never allow them to work in the mines. The women who signed up were happy and excited. Women in this era only cooked, took care of their families, sewed, farmed, molded mud bricks, or became maids for rich households. Even working as a blacksmith's apprentice was not allowed. They were bored with these jobs and wanted something new, but now they could. And the best thing was they got to earn the same salary as a man. In this era, even in the same profession, men earned more than women. For example, in the same bakery or farming jobs. Even if a woman did exactly the same thing as a man, she'd still get lower wages compared to that man. They usually got frustrated because they too have families to take care of. Some of them were widows, and some had husbands who became bedridden with illness. They became the breadwinner in those cases and had to support their husbands and children. But this era made things too hard for them. Over the past month, Landon had been teaching Lucy, his mom Kim, Grace, and little Momo math. Likewise, Lucy and Kim also taught Grace and little Momo how to write, read, count numbers, and also do basic addition and subtraction. In Landon's opinion, Grace was very intelligent and had a sharp mind. With more time, Grace would definitely become a master in mathematics. In the future, he would let his mom teach math too, while Grace thought math won. But not for now. She had to continue learning properly. Landon went down to the alchemy department and transported a huge stack of chalk to the classrooms in the upper region. Each student would be given 2 packs of 12 stacked chalk sticks, 24 pieces of chalk in total, and 2 slate boards for free at the beginning of the term. Once they lost or finished their school supplies, they could buy extra supplies from the school store or the local stores in the central region. After dinner, Landon decided to continue writing books on all the knowledge he acquired from his past life as an engineer and from the system rewards. Ever since he finished the farming mission a while ago, he had been writing daily on farming, basic chemistry, and mathematics. He had been using the system's time capsule for 3 hours a day in the real world, *** 15 days in the time capsule, alongside a concentration speed pill. One concentration speed pill allowed him to concentrate and write super fast for 1 hour in the real world. After taking the pill, he realized that in 2 hours, 10 capsule days, he had written 5 books. Landon was pleased with the pill. So far, he had written 32 copies of Basic Chemistry, 25 copies of Introduction to Farming, 39 copies of Basic Mathematics, and 3,000 timetable parchment papers for each student. Today, after his morning teaching session, he decided to continue making more copies. His goal was to have 60 copies of Basic Chemistry, 50 copies of Introduction to Farming, and 60 copies of Basic Mathematics by Friday. Once all the copies were done, he would allocate them to schools and all industrial departments in Baymard. He also decided to continue writing and readjusting the laws in Baymard, as well as the military rules for soldiers. Baymard was sort of a ruleless city. Since the Empire stopped caring about the place, the nobles who lived here before just did what they wanted and also took what they wanted. They were just bullies, Landon thought. And just like that, Landon's week flew by fast. He spent his days writing, teaching, assisting in farming, building mud houses, fishing, training, and building gigantic furnaces for different departments in the construction industry. Occasionally, he would also visit the mines and the alchemy laboratory to see how they were doing. By the time it was Friday, he had accomplished all his goals. Out of the total copies he had, he kept 30 basic chemistry books, 30 basic mathematics books, 30 introduction to farming books, and 2,000 copies of the timetable in the school storage room. In Baymard, every student would get 2 parchment paper timetables for free. But if the student loses them, she would have to buy one from the school or ships in the central region. 2 of them would cost 1 copper coin. As for the rest of the books, he decided to distribute them to all supervisors and overseers within all the industries in Baymard. On Friday, Tim came back with a large wagon filled with pickaxes. They were unloaded and neatly arranged in a tool storage facility for the workers. Thinking about it now, Landon thought it would be a good idea to build a locker room where everyone could keep their tools in it. Of course, building it would be the duty of Deortment 4 when they start working. Landon gave 10 copies of basic chemistry, 10 copies of basic mathematics, and 300 timetable sheets to the construction industry. Since all the supervisors already know how to read and write, as well as do math, he decided to give them the copies. Be it the alchemists or even Tim's group of people, all of them knew how to read. Hence, each supervisor was to keep one copy and read and fully understand them. In the future, although these courses will still be taught in school, if the employee doesn't understand something at work, it is the duty of his supervisor to explain it to him or her. Back on Earth, supervisors and overseers knew the hows, the whats, and the whys. Why they kept the temperature low in some procedures, why the pressure was high, the dangers of doing certain things, and so on. Engineering itself is a very risky field. Some compounds and chemicals can only be kept or worked on at certain pressures and temperatures. Higher pressures could cause explosions in the tank, killing everyone instantly. After all, 95% of chemicals are flammable at specific entropies, pressures, and so on. Hence, in Landon's mind, the supervisors and overseers must be knowledgeable enough to explain and assist the workers. They must act and guide all those under them. He also gave 10 copies of basic chemistry, 10 copies of basic mathematics, and 300 copies of the timetable to the Cultivation industry, as well as 4 copies of basic chemistry, 8 copies of introduction to farming, 4 copies of basic mathematics, and 300 copies of the timetable to the food industry. His reason for giving the food industry chemistry and mathematics books was simple. Very soon, Baymard would start processing canned tomatoes, tuna, and many more, as well process their own spices and food preservatives. To make all this happen, chemistry plays a major part in it, talk less of mathematics. Once the night came, Landon jumped onto his bed and closed his eyes immediately. Finally, the little king was fast asleep. Again, the days flew by fast, and just like that, Monday was here. Let's make some glass, Landon thought. Gunpowder was a delicate thing. To make it, one needed saltpeter, charcoal, and pure sulfur. The purer the sulfur, the stronger the explosive effect of the gunpowder. So far, there was saltpeter and charcoal available, but pure sulfur was a different matter on its own. Pyrite rocks, called the fool's gold, is formed when iron, ore, and sulfur fuse together naturally with time. Since iron is silvery and sulfur is yellowish, the rock is a blend between the two colors and can easily be spotted in the mines. Hence the name fool's gold. Most pyrite rocks have 53% sulfur in them. If Landon just threw these pyrite rocks in with the charcoal and saltpeter, the gunpowder it would produce would be trash. He needed at least 97% of pure sulfur for it to be extremely powerful. Hence extraction was the only way. Landon could have used the clay pot method to extract the sulfur, but that method was unsafe and not practical for industrial use. Generally, when sulfur is being extracted, a very poisonous and toxic gas called H2S is released. When using the clay pot method, there is no real safe way to dispose of the H2S, making the workers breathe the poisonous gas. Large amounts of H2S can instantly damage your health, but small batches will not cause a lot of harm. But that's why people only use this clay pot methods in small batches, 5 to 6 stones a time. Landon didn't want to risk the health of his workers' health, so the clay pot method was off the table. How could he let them breathe in poisonous gases? The workers would be producing gunpowder for God know how long. At Leafy, it should be safe. Hence, he decided to build his own apparatus using iron and glass. He wanted to create a safe way to dispel the H2S gas, as well as carry out in industrial scale batches, 150 to 300 stones. If he was going to build something, why not make it industrial scale? What's the point of throwing 5 or 6 rocks there when you could throw in hundreds? It didn't make anything sense for Landon, who had hired more than 100 workers to just throw a few stones a day. He wanted a mass production of sulfur, not a tiny sample. Go big or go home, he thought. He also decided to build it in a way that was easy to manually control for now. But when electricity would come, he would attach temperature sensors, pressure sensors, and other devices to a control room. Oh, the future is so bright. I can't wait to build a food processing plant. Oh, wait. I missed toothpaste. Maybe no. I'll do an industrial paint making plant first. Landon thought, while drowning in his futuristic fantasies. Little did he know that dangerous forces were gathering in the shadows, waiting to make their move.